Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 awakened the Aurora Omnitrix and married Eunice. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Evolutionary Convergence. The Orbi. Tall descent alarm blared through Commander Benjamin Tennyson's quarters, yanking him from a dreamless sleep. 28 now. With a decade of interstellar service behind him, Ben didn't jolt awake like rookies did. His eyes simply opened, alert and focused, mind clearing with practiced efficiency. Tracking data, Tetrax, he commanded, swinging his legs over his bunk as the Petrosipian pilot's gravelly voice filled the room. Unidentified object, approximately 2 meters in diameter. Approaching Earth's atmosphere at velocity exceeding standard meteoroid parameters. Trajectory suggests artificial guidance. Tetrax paused. It's aiming for the Black Hills, South Dakota. Your old stomping grounds. Ben's jaw tightened. Coincidences didn't exist in his line of work. He glanced at the Omnitrix, still the same device Azimuth had given him as a teenager, though recalibrated countless times. Its familiar weight had become a part of him, like the responsibility it represented. Wake Rook. I want our feet on the ground before whatever that is makes impact. 20 minutes later, Ben stood in the launch bay adjusting the sleeves of his commander's uniform, charcoal gray with green trim. The plumber insignia gleaming on his shoulder. The room hummed with pre-mission activity as technicians prepared the drop ship. Rook Blanco approached, his feline features composed despite the early hour. The object has altered course twice more. It is definitely being controlled. Are controlling itself, Ben muttered. Any response to hailing frequencies? None. Energy signatures are unusual. Not matching any known technologies in our database. Ben nodded, unsurprised. That's why they send us, partner. The usual would be someone else's problem. The Ravanagonder's expression remained serious. 10 years together, and I still cannot tell when you are joking. That's what makes it funny. Ben clapped his friend's shoulder before addressing the assembled team. Listen up. Unknown object, unknown origin, unknown intent. We contain, we assess, we adapt. Standard protocols until we know what we're dealing with. The team nodded. 12 of the best, each selected personally by Ben over the years. They moved with the synchronized efficiency of people who trusted each other with their lives regularly. Commander, called a young technician. Impact projected in 6 minutes at these coordinates. Ben studied the display, recognition flashing in his eyes. That's barely 5 miles from where Grandpa Max first took me camping. The statistical improbability of such a coincidence, Rook began, is exactly why we're going in hot, Ben finished. Someone's sending a message. The drop ship detached from the plumber vessel with a metallic clunk, accelerating into Earth's upper atmosphere. Ben watched the planet swell beneath them. The familiar blue marble that had somehow become both home and headquarters. The years had changed many things, but not his commitment to protecting it. He felt the Omnitrix warm slightly against his wrist, a subtle reaction it sometimes had to certain energy signatures. Another piece of the puzzle. 30 seconds to landing zone, the pilot announced. Object impact in 90 seconds. Ben moved to the rear hatch. Rook, coordinate the perimeter. I'll make first contact. Ben, Rook's voice dropped, using his friend's name rather than his title. Perhaps caution would be advisable. Your tendency to trust me, Ben smiled, the confidence in his eyes genuine but tempered by experience. I've learned a few things since I was 10. The ship touched down with a gentle thud, its landing struts absorbing the impact. As the hatch hissed open, Ben activated the Omnitrix with a practiced twist. The familiar green glow enveloped him. His DNA rewriting itself in seconds. XLR8, he announced, more from habit than necessity. The Kinesolaran form stood poised, its wheel-like feet ready to launch into action. Team, establish the containment perimeter. Ben ordered, his voice altered but commanding. I'll intercept the object. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he accelerated, becoming a blue and black streak across the moonlit landscape. The night air rushed past his aerodynamic helmet as he navigated the familiar terrain of the Black Hills with muscle memory from childhood summers. The incoming object burned bright against the night sky, a shooting star with purpose. Ben calculated its trajectory, positioning himself at the projected impact point, a small clearing surrounded by pine trees that seemed eerily familiar. 10 seconds to impact. The object slowed, defying physics, its fiery tail diminishing as it approached the ground. Not a crash, Ben realized. A landing. 5 seconds. Ben braced himself, ready to move in any direction. The kinesolaran form would give him the speed to react to whatever emerged. 3, 2, 1. The object, a sphere of swirling energy rather than solid matter, touched down with surprising gentleness. No impact crater, no shockwave, just a pulsing orb of light that illuminated the clearing with shifting patterns of blue and violet. Commander Tennyson to base. Object has landed. It appears to be some form of energy construct, approximately 2 meters in diameter. No visible technology or components. Proceeding with caution, Ben circled the sphere at super speed, creating a vortex around it to contain any potential release of energy. The sphere pulsed in response, its rhythms changing to match his movements. It's reacting to me, he realized. Or to the Omnitrix. Slowing to normal speed, Ben approached carefully, the Omnitrix on his kinesolaran wrist beginning to pulse with the same rhythm as the sphere. Decades of experience told him to retreat, to analyze from a safe distance, but instinct pulled him forward. Ben Tennyson, a voice echoed, not from the sphere but seemingly from within his mind. Bearer of the Omnitrix, defender of Earth, timeline nexus point. The last designation caught him off guard. Identify yourself, he demanded, voice steady despite his unease. The sphere's surface rippled, and an image formed within it, a clock face with impossible geometries. Hands moving backward and forward simultaneously. Chronosapian origins, Ben muttered. Are you associated with Maltruant? We are the collective, the voice replied. Maltruant was an aberration, a singular consciousness. We are many, yet one. We observe, we maintain, we correct. The sphere pulsed brighter, and Ben felt the Omnitrix grow warmer against his wrist. Acting on instinct honed through years of combat, he slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, triggering a transformation. Feedback. Energy crackled around his new form, the conductoid's P. Lugs and antennae extending toward the sphere. Whatever you're sending my way, I can handle it. Not sending, the voice corrected. Revealing. The Aurora awaits its rightful wielder. The sphere suddenly expanded, enveloping Ben in swirling energy. He immediately began absorbing it, channeling it through his conductoid form, but the energy didn't diminish. Instead, it seemed to resonate with the Omnitrix itself, creating a feedback loop that grew in intensity. Pain lanced through Ben's body, not from any attack but from the Omnitrix itself. He'd experienced recalibrations before, but this was different, deeper, more fundamental. The device wasn't merely changing, it was evolving. What are you doing to the Omnitrix? Ben managed through gritted teeth. Not doing. Awakening. The Celestial Sapien's judgment approaches. The Aurora Omnitrix is necessary. The energy sphere collapsed inward, concentrating around Ben's wrist. The familiar green of the Omnitrix began to shift, iridescent. T-patterns of blue and violet spreading across its surface like celestial auroras. A final pulse of energy knocked Ben backward, reverting him to human form as he landed hard against the trunk of a pine tree. The clearing fell silent, moonlight once again the only illumination. Ben looked down at his wrist. The Omnitrix remained, but transformed. Its housing had become sleeker, the familiar gris. N replaced by shifting patterns of cosmic energy that reminded him of the forge of creation. The display interface was sharper, crystalline rather than digital. Ben. Rook's voice called as his partner raced into the clearing. Proto-tool raised. We detected an energy surge. Are you injured? I'm fine, Ben said, rising to his feet, eyes still fixed on the transformed device. But something's happened to the Omnitrix. Rook approached cautiously, scanning the device with his multifunction tool. These readings, I have never seen anything like them. The energy patterns are similar to THOs created during a Celestial Sapien reality alteration. Ben raised his wrist, studying the transformed Omnitrix. It called it the Aurora Omnitrix. Said something about the Celestial Sapien's judgment approaching. That does not sound promising, Rook observed, his typical understatement making Ben smile despite the situation. We should contact Azimuth immediately. Ben nodded, then paused as the device emitted a soft chime. The interface activated without his touch, projecting a holographic display unlike any the Omnitrix had shown before. Instead of the familiar silhouettes of alien forms, it displayed a double helix of DNA strands intertwining with energy patterns. "That's new," Ben murmured, reaching toward the projection. As his fingers contacted the hologram, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsed. A wave of transformation energy engulfed him, but unlike any he'd experienced before. It wasn't the wholesale rewriting of his DNA into an alien form, it was an integration, a synthesis. When the light faded, Ben remained recognizably human, but changed. His musculature had densified like a Tetraman's, his skin showing a faint red undertone. His senses sharpened with Vulpimancer acuity. Energy crackled subtly around his fingers, reminiscent of feedback's powers. "Fascinating," Rook breathed, scanning Ben again. "You appear to be a human-alien hybrid. Multiple species genetic markers are present, but in perfect equilibrium." Ben examined his hands, feeling the controlled power flowing through them. His mind processed information with crystalline clarity, Galvan intellect without sacrificing his human perspective. "It didn't transform me into an alien. It synthesized alien DNA with my own." "That should be impossible," Rook stated. "The Omnitrix was designed to temporarily rewrite your genetic code, not merge it with other species." "The Aurora Omnitrix," Ben corrected, feeling the name's rightness. "And apparently it breaks the rules." He concentrated, willing the transformation to end. The device responded instantly, returning him to fully human form. "Ben, this technology exceeds even Azimuth's known capabilities. We should proceed with extreme caution." "Rip." L of amusement passed through Ben at his partner's predictable response. "Noted. But first, we need to understand what we're dealing with." He activated his communication link. "Team, secure the perimeter. No evidence of hostile intent. But remain alert. Rook and I are returning to base with an artifact." The walk back to the ship gave Ben time to process what had happened. The Aurora Omnitrix felt different against his skin. Not heavier, but more present, as if it had become more deeply connected to him on a fundamental level. "The Chronosapian Collective," he said quietly to Rook as they walked. "Ever heard of them?" Rook shook his head. "Chronosapians are largely solitary beings. A collective would be unusual for their species." "And what about this timeline nexus point business?" "They called me that, like it was some kind of title. In certain theoretical models of space-time, nexus points are junctures where multiple timeline possibilities converge or diverge based on key decisions or events." Rook's expression grew concerned. "If you were such a point, it would explain the interest of time-manipulating beings." Ben absorbed this, adding it to the growing list of questions that needed answers. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, heavier now with this new development. Whatever the Aurora Omnitrix was, whatever the Chronosapians wanted, he knew with certainty that the stakes had just been raised. "Commander," a voice called over his communicator, "we're detecting another anomaly. 50 miles northeast of your position." Ben exchanged glances with Rook. "Details." "Energy signature is different from the first object. More biological in nature." A cold certainty settled in Ben's gut. "Prepare for immediate departure once we're aboard." Within minutes, the drop ship was airborne again, slicing through the night sky toward the new coordinates. Ben studied the Aurora Omnitrix, its shifting patterns reminiscent of the cosmic ballet he'd witnessed in the Forge of Creation. "I'm detecting unusual radiation from the device," Rook noted, scanning it from across the ship's hold. "Nothing harmful, but it appears to be communicating." Ben's eyebrows rose. "With what?" "Unknown. But the signal strengthens as we approach our destination." The ship's pilot called back, 5 minutes to target, Commander." Satellite image. Rye shows a small impact crater in a wooded area. No structures or civilians nearby. Ben nodded, mind racing through possibilities. "Set us down a quarter mile out. I don't want to spook whatever's waiting for us." As the ship descended, Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix warm against his skin. Not the burning sensation of malfunction, but a gentle recognition, as if it were greeting something familiar. "I'm going in first," he told his team as the ship touched down. "Maintain position until I signal." "With respect, Commander," Rook began, "protocol dictates that I use my best judgment," Ben finished with a half smile. And my best judgment says this is connected to what happened to the Omnitrix. Trust me, partner. Rook relented with a nod. Very well. But maintain open communications. Ben stepped from the ship into the cool night air, the forest around him silent except for the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed softly, its interface activating to display a directional indicator. It's guiding me, he murmured into his communicator. Northwest, about a quarter mile. He moved through the forest with practiced stealth, years of experience allowing him to navigate the darkness without betraying his presence. The Aurora Omnitrix's pulse quickened as he approached his destination, its light dimming automatically to avoid giving away his position. The crater came into view, a shallow depression perhaps 15 feet across, recently formed. At its center lay a humanoid figure, motionless in the moonlight. Ben froze, recognition dawning as he took in the blonde hair. The white and green attire. Eunice, he whispered, momentarily forgetting his communicator was active. The Omnitrix. Rook responded immediately. Ben, proceed with caution. The Omnitrix was deactivated years ago. Ben approached slowly, the Aurora Omnitrix growing warmer with each step. Memories flooded back, his brief time with Eunice years ago, discovering she was actually a prototype Omnitrix created by Azimuth, capable of storing and processing DNA samples. She lay unmoving, appearing exactly as he remembered her, which was impossible. Even if the Omnitrix had somehow reactivated, it shouldn't have maintained the same human form after all this time. Ben knelt beside her, automatically checking for vital signs. To his surprise, he found a pulse, steady and strong. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed in perfect synchronization with it. She's alive, he reported. Stable vital signs. No visible injuries. Ben, the Omnitrix is not a living being, Rook reminded him. It is a sophisticated device designed to. Eunice's eyes snapped open, startlingly green in the moonlight. She gasped, drawing in air as if taking her first breath. Ben, she whispered, voice exactly as he remembered. Her eyes focused on his face, then widened as they took in his matured features. You're older. 10 years older, he confirmed gently. Eunice, what happened? How are you here? She sat up slowly, movements fluid and natural. I was asleep. No, that's not right. Her brow furrowed in confusion. I was in stasis in Azimuth's laboratory. Then there was a voice. Many voices, speaking as one. They said it was time to awaken. Her gaze dropped to his wrist, focusing on the Aurora Omnitrix. They said the Aurora was calling. The device pulsed in response to her words, its shifting patterns momentarily intensifying. Ben felt a resonance between it and Eunice, a connection he couldn't explain but undeniably sensed. The Chronosapian Collective, Ben guessed. They sent you here, just like they sent the energy sphere that transformed the Omnitrix. Eunice nodded slowly, then with more certainty. Yes, the Collective. They awakened me, but not just my systems. She looked down at her hands in wonder. I'm different, Ben. I can feel it. I'm not just the Omnitrix anymore. What do you mean? The Omnitrix was designed to process and store DNA. To sample and catalog. I was a tool, an extension of Azimuth's work. She placed a hand over her chest. But now I'm complete. I have continuity of consciousness. Memory. Identity. Her eyes met his, filled with amazement and confusion. I think I'm alive, Ben. Really alive. Ben studied her, seeing the subtle differences his initial shock had missed. Her expressions were more nuanced, her movements more naturalistic. There was a depth to her eyes that hadn't existed before, a true consciousness looking back at him. The Aurora Omnitrix chimed softly, its interface activating to display a double E-helix similar to the one it had shown earlier. But this one had unique markers highlighted along its length, markers that pulsed in harmony with similar points displayed in a second helix that appeared alongside it. The device is showing a DNA comparison. Rook's voice came through the communicator, his scans picking up the holographic display. One sample is yours, Ben. The other appears to be Eunice's. There are remarkable similarities in certain key sections. Ben stared at the display, then at Eunice, whose eyes reflected the hologram's soft light. The Aurora Omnitrix and whatever you've become, they're connected. Synchronized, Eunice corrected softly. Two halves of a greater system. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers hovering near the device on Ben's wrist. May I? Ben nodded, extending his arm toward her. As her fingertips contacted the Aurora Omnitrix, it responded with a gentle pulse of light. Eunice gasped, her eyes widening. I can feel it, she whispered. It's consciousness, not artificial intelligence, something more fundamental. Her gaze met Ben's, wonder mixing with urgency. Ben, it's trying to tell me something. About the Chronosapiens. About why they awakened us both. What is it? Ben asked, tensing at her tone. They're afraid, Eunice said, her voice dropping lower. Something is coming. Something that exists outside time itself. They called it the Celestial Sapien Judgment. The phrase sent a chill through Ben. His encounters with Celestial Sapiens, the omnipotent aliens who could alter reality with a thought, had been rare but profound. A judgment from such beings could rewrite the very fabric of existence. Did they say what this judgment is? Or when it's coming? Eunice shook her head, only that the Aurora Omnitrix is meant to stand against it. No, that's not quite right. Her brow furrowed in concentration. To balance it, to ensure the judgment is fair. Commander, Rook's voice interrupted, we're detecting multiple temporal distortions forming in your vicinity. Recommend immediate evacuation. Ben helped Eunice to her feet. Time to go. Can you walk? I think so, she said, taking a tentative step. My body feels more substantial than before, more real. They had barely made it 10 steps when the air before them shimmered, reality folding in on itself as a temporal distortion formed. Rom within the distortion stepped a figure, humanoid but clearly not human, its body composed of intricate clockwork mechanisms beneath translucent crystal skin. A Chronosapien, but unlike any Ben had encountered before. Benjamin Tennyson, the being intoned, its voice resonating with multiple overlapping tones. Wielder of the Aurora, we meet in physical form at last. Ben positioned himself protectively in front of Eunice. You're part of the collective. The ones who sent the sphere. I am Temporis Prime, voice of the Chronosapien collective. The being's clockwork face shifted, its gear-like features rearranging to approximate expression. We have awakened the Aurora Omnitrix and restored the Unitrix to full sentience. Now you must understand why. I'm listening, Ben said cautiously. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsing steadily against his wrist. Temporis Prime's crystalline body glinted in the moonlight. The multiverse stands at a critical juncture. The Celestial Sapiens debate AF. Fundamental alteration to the nature of reality, what they call a purification. A simplification of timelines to eliminate what they perceive as chaotic elements. And what exactly would that mean? Ben asked, though a knot in his stomach suggested he already knew. The erasure of countless timeline variations. Billions of reality expressions, gone. Diversity of possibility, eliminated. The Chrono-Sapiens voice modulated with what might have been emotion. Including most timelines in which humanity evolves to its potential. Eunice stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ben. Why would they do this? Celestial Sapiens exist beyond conventional time. They see the infinite branching of possibilities as untidy. Some among them believe fewer, more orderly timelines would create a more perfect multiverse. Temporis Prime's gears shifted, others disagree. Hence, the judgment, a final decision on whether to proceed. And where do we fit in? Ben gestured to the Aurora Omnitrix, then to Eunice. You, Benjamin Tennyson, stand at a crucial nexus point. Your choices have already created and preserved more timeline variations than any other being in this universal sector. Temporis turned toward Eunice, and the evolved Unitrix represents the perfect synthesis of biological and technological evolution, the very pinnacle of what the Celestial Sapiens would eliminate. Ben processed this, years of experience helping him cut to the heart of the matter. You're saying we're supposed to what? Argue humanity's case before the Celestial Sapiens. Not argue. Demonstrate. Temporis Prime gestured to the Aurora Omnitrix. The device you now wear is not merely an evolution of Azimuth's creation. It is a key, a means to access and navigate the timelines the Celestial Sapiens would judge. How exactly am I supposed to use it for that? Ben asked, skepticism edging his voice. The Chronosapiens' clockwork face shifted again. That, you must discover. We cannot interfere directly in the judgment. We can only provide the tools necessary for balance. Before Ben could respond, multiple communicator alerts sounded simultaneously. Rook's voice cut through, tense and urgent. Ben, we're detecting massive temporal distortions worldwide. Something is happening on a global scale. Temporis Prime's mechanisms whirred faster. It begins. The preliminary phases of the judgment. Reality is already being assessed. As if confirming his words, the sky above them shimmered, aurora-like patterns of energy spreading across the night sky, beautiful but ominous in their alien symmetry. Your team should return to your orbital station, the Chronocypian advised. Temporal disruptions will intensify on planetary surfaces. And what about us? Eunice asked, instinctively moving closer to Ben. You must prepare. Learn to use the Aurora Omnitrix. Discover its capabilities. And most importantly, the Chronocypian's form began to fade, reality folding around it. Find Azimuth. He knows more than he has revealed. With those words, Temporis Prime vanished, leaving Ben and Eunice alone beneath the shimmering sky. Commander, Rook's voice called through the communicator. The temporal distortions are increasing in frequency. Whatever's happening, it's accelerating. Ben made a quick decision. Get the team back to the station. Eunice and I will rendezvous with you there. Understood. But how will you? The Aurora Omnitrix, Ben replied, studying the device. Time to see what it can really do. He turned to Eunice, who watched him with a mixture of trust and uncertainty. I know we've got a lot to figure out, but right now, we need to get to the plumber station. Are you up for testing some new abilities? Eunice nodded, her expression resolute. I'm not the same Omnitrix you knew, Ben. Whatever I've become, I'm ready to find out what it means. Ben smiled, recognizing the determination in her eyes, so human, so real. Then let's do this together. He activated the Aurora Omnitrix, its interface responding to his touch with fluid precision. Instead of selecting a specific alien form, he focused on the synthesis function it had demonstrated earlier. The device pulsed in acknowledgement, a wave of transformation energy enveloping him. This time, he guided the process consciously, focusing on specific alien traits he wanted to integrate, a Necrophrygian's intangibility and flight, combined with an Aerophibian's speed and a Galvan's intelligence. The Aurora Omnitrix responded, merging these traits with his human baseline. When the transformation completed, Ben remained recognizably himself, but altered, his body surrounded by a faint blue aura, shoulders sprouting translucent wings that shifted between visibility and ghost-like intangibility. His mind processed information at accelerated speeds, calculating trajectories and energy requirements automatically. Incredible, Eunice breathed, witnessing the transformation. Ben extended his hand to her. Let's see if your connection to the Aurora Omnitrix goes both ways. Understanding immediately, Eunice placed her hand in his. The device pulsed, energy flowing between them. To Ben's amazement, Eunice's form shimmered, taking on aspects similar to his own hybrid state, not identical, but complementary. I can feel it, she gasped, flexing newly formed wings. Not just the physical changes, but the connection to you, to the Aurora Omnitrix. It's like, we're in perfect synchronization. Ben squeezed her hand, feeling the resonance between them strengthen. Then let's fly. Together, they launched skyward, their partially intangible forms slicing through the air with preternatural speed. Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix guiding him, optimizing their flight path to Naviga. The increasing temporal distortions that rippled through the atmosphere. As they soared over the darkened landscape, Ben observed the changes spreading across Earth's surface, shimmering patches where reality seemed thinner. Moments where time itself appeared to stutter and skip. Whatever the celestial Cypian judgment entailed, its effects were already manifesting. Ben, Eunice called over the rush of wind, look. Above them, the aurora patterns had intensified, forming intricate geometric shapes that shifted and realigned with mathematical precision. Within these patterns, Ben could out glimpses of other realities, flashes of alternate Earths, different versions of familiar places. They're assessing all possible timeline variations, he realized aloud. Categorizing them. Eunice nodded, her enhanced intelligence allowing her to grasp the implications. Deciding which to preserve and which to purify. The thought sent a chill through Ben that had nothing to do with their altitude. If the Chronocypian was right, countless versions of reality, of Earth, of humanity, of everyone he knew, hung in the balance. The orbital plumber station came into view as they breached the upper atmosphere, a sleek construct of advanced technology that served as Earth's first line of defense against extraterrestrial threats. Now it would have to serve as their base of operations for a threat that transcended conventional understanding. As they approached the docking bay, Ben noticed the station itself was surrounded by a bubble of stable space-time, protected from the temporal distortions affecting Earth below. Azimuth's foresight, he guessed. The Galvan creator had always built contingencies into his designs. They passed through the atmospheric shield, their synthesized for Ms. returning to normal as they touched down on the docking bay floor. Rook and several senior plumbers waited, expressions ranging from relief to shock at the sight of Eunice. "Commander," Rook acknowledged, eyes fixed on Eunice. "The Omnitrix is functional." "Her name is Eunice," Ben corrected firmly. "And she's more than functional. She's evolved." Eunice stepped forward, meeting the Ravanagonder's analytical gaze. "I understand your caution, Magister Rook. I am not what I once was, but I am here to help." Rook studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Any assistance would be welcome. The temporal disruptions have affected communication with Galvan Prime. We cannot reach Azimuth." Ben frowned. "That's our next move, then. We need to get to Galvan Prime. The teleportation systems are offline," one of the technicians reported. "And conventional space travel is too risky with the current temporal instabilities." Ben exchanged glances with Eunice, sensing her thoughts through their lingering connection. "We may have another way." He led the group to the command center, where holographic displays showed the spreading temporal distortions across Earth and the surrounding system. Senior plumbers worked frantically at control stations, attempting to stabilize communications and monitor the escalating situation. "Status report," Ben commanded as he entered. Magister Patelade, the Piscis Volan officer, turned from the main display. "Not good, Commander. We're detecting temporal anomalies throughout the solar system. Some areas are experiencing accelerated time flow, others reduced. Earth's moon has shown particular instability. We've observed it cycling through multiple possible configurations." Ben absorbed this, his mind racing. The Celestial Sapiens are running simulations, testing different timeline permutations. Celestial Sapiens. Patelade's gills fluttered in alarm. "You've confirmed their involvement." "More than that." Ben held up his wrist, displaying the transformed Omnitrix. "We've been drafted to participate in their judgment." As succinctly as possible, Ben explained what they'd learned from Temporis Prime, the Celestial Sapien judgment, the threat of timeline purification, and the apparent role the Aurora Omnitrix was meant to play. "This is unprecedented," Rook stated when Ben finished. "Celestial Sapiens rarely interact with lower-dimensional beings, let alone involve them in their decision-making processes." "I don't think they gave us a choice," Ben replied grimly. "But I'm not about to let them erase countless NES without at least trying to stop them." Eunice, who had been studying the holographic displays with intense focus, suddenly straightened. "I think I understand something about the Aurora Omnitrix's function," she said. "Ben, may I?" He nodded, extending his wrist toward her. Eunice placed her fingers against the device, closing her eyes in concentration. The Aurora Omnitrix responded, projecting a complex holographic interface between them. "The original Omnitrix was designed to transform you into different alien species," Eunice explained, manipulating the holographic display with intuitive gestures. "The Aurora Omnitrix does far more. It doesn't just transform, it synthesizes, integrates, harmonizes." "We've seen that," Ben acknowledged. "But how does that help with the Celestial Sapiens?" "Because it's not limited to synthesizing alien DNA," Eunice continued, her expression brightening with realization. "It can synthesize reality constructs, timeline variations." Her eyes met Ben's. "It can create bridges between potential realities, stabilizing them, harmonizing them, instead of erasing them." The implications hit Ben like a physical force. "You're saying it could prevent the purification, save the timelines they want to erase." "Not prevent the judgment," Eunice clarified, "but offer an alternative solution. Harmony instead of purification." Rook leaned forward, studying the holographic display. "And this would require traveling to Galvan Prime first, to consult with Azimuth." "Azimuth created both the Omnitrix and the Omnitrix," Eunice said. "If anyone understands our full potential, it would be him." Quote. Ben nodded decisively. Then that's our mission. Rook, you're in command of Earth operations while we're gone. Coordinate with other plumber bases to monitor the temporal disruptions. And how will you reach Galvan Prime without teleportation or conventional spacecraft? Rook asked. Ben and Eunice exchanged glances, a plan already forming between them through their unique connection. We create our own way, Ben said, activating the Aurora Omnitrix once more. Using the very ability we need to master. This time, he focused on different alien TS, a Chronosapien's temporal manipulation, a Galilean's gravity control, and a Celestial Sapien's reality-altering capabilities. The latter was a tremendous risk. Ben had always been cautious about using Alien X's powers, knowing their potential for catastrophic consequences. But the Aurora Omnitrix seemed to understand his intent, synthesizing just enough of each trait for his purpose. The transformation was more profound than previous ones. Ben's form became less human in appearance, his body taking on a crystalline quality that shifted between solid matter and pure energy. Chronosapien clock. Work mechanisms manifested within his translucent flesh, ticking in perfect harmony. A corona of star-like energy surrounded him, reminiscent of a Celestial Sapien's cosmic aura but on a smaller scale. Ben, Rook asked uncertainly, stepping back from the transformed commander. Still me, Ben assured him, his voice layered with harmonic overtones. Just with a few upgrades. He turned to Eunice, extending his hand. Without hesitation, she took it, gasping as the Aurora Omnitrix's energy flowed between them. Her transformation mirrored his own but with differences reflecting her unique nature. Where Ben's form incorporated mechanical elements, hers synthesized biological components, creating a perfect complementary counterpart. We'll return as soon as possible, Ben told his team. In the meantime, protect Earth as best you can. The temporal distortions should stabilize temporarily once we're gone. The Celestial Sapien's attention will follow the Aurora Omnitrix. Rook nodded, concern evident in his eyes but outweighed by trust built over a decade of partnership. Good luck, Ben. When have I ever needed luck? Ben grinned, the expression strange on his transformed face. Then, more seriously, take care of our home. Partner. With those words, Ben and Eunice concentrated, channeling the synthesized powers of their transformed states. The air around them began to warp, folding like origami as they created a temporal corridor, not teleportation, but a controlled bubble of space-time that could navigate the distortions surrounding Earth. Ready? Ben asked Eunice, their hands still joined. She nodded, her crystalline features set with determination. Together, the corridor stabilized around them, and with a final pulse of energy from the Aurora Omnitrix, vanished from the plumber station, beginning a journey that would ultimately determine the fate of countless realities. As they traveled through the swirling vortex of space-time, Ben felt Eunice's consciousness intertwined with his own, not invasively, but supportively. Together, they guided their temporal bubble through the chaotic maelstrom of reality under assessment, navigating toward Galva N Prime and the answers they desperately needed. In that moment of perfect synchronization, Ben realized that whatever the Aurora Omnitrix was, whatever he and Eunice had become, they represented something the Celestial Sapiens might never truly comprehend. The beautiful complexity of evolution, of connection, of life itself. And perhaps that understanding would be enough to save the multiverse. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2 Resonant Frequencies. The temporal corridor collapsed around them like a shattered kaleidoscope, fragments of distorted space-time dissolving into the atmosphere of Galvan Prime. Ben and Eunice materialized on a floating platform high above the planet's surface, their synthesized forms reverting to baseline human appearance as the Aurora Omnitrix powered down with a soft pulse. That, Ben exhaled, steadying himself against a railing, was intense. Eunice nodded, her eyes still reflecting starlight from their journey. The temporal distortions were worse than anticipated. Some things accelerating the judgment process. Ben surveyed their surroundings, immediately noting the wrongness permeating Galvan Prime. The planet's floating cities, masterpieces of advance de-engineering typically arranged in perfect geometric patterns, appeared disjointed, sections phasing in and out of temporal sync. In the distance, an entire district flickered between multiple architectural configurations. As if reality couldn't decide which version should exist. The Celestial Sapiens aren't being subtle, he murmured. A familiar voice responded from behind them, dry and sardonic. Subtlety has never been their strong suit, despite their pretensions to cosmic sophistication. Ben whirled to find a diminutive gray figure regarding them with large, intelligent eyes. Azimuth. Who else would be foolish enough to remain on a planet experiencing temporal flux? The Galvan inventor asked, hopping onto a hovering platform that brought him to eye level with the humans. His gaze fixed on Ben's wrist, narrowing with a mixture of fascination and concern. So, it has happened. You knew, Ben stated rather than asked. You knew about the Aurora Omnitrix. I theorized, Azimuth corrected, his tiny fingers gesturing dismissively. There's a difference between theoretical prediction and practical manifestation. His attention shifted to Eunice, expression softening almost imperceptibly. And the Omnitrix evolution. Another theory proven correct, it seems. Eunice stepped forward. I'm alive, Azimuth. Truly alive. Yes, the Galvan acknowledged simply. A possibility encoded in your original design. One I never expected to witness. He turned abruptly, his hover platform moving toward an inconspicuous doorway. Follow me. We have much to discuss, and this location is temporally unstable. They followed Azimuth through the doorway into a transport tube that descended rapidly beneath the city. Ben watched Galvan Prime's understructure flash by, an intricate network of technology and bioengineering that put Earth's most advanced systems to shame. The Chronosapiens sent us to find you, Ben said as they descended. A being calling itself Temporus Prime said you know more than you've revealed. Chronosapiens, Azimuth snorted, always meddling in matters beyond their jurisdiction. They observe time but rarely understand its deeper patterns. His ancient eyes fixed on Ben. Still, in this instance, their interference may have been necessary. The transport tube opened into a vast chamber unlike anything Ben had seen on his previous visits to Galvan Prime. Where most Galvan architecture favored precision and minimalism, this space felt ancient, almost organic in its design. Crystalline structures grew from the floor and ceiling, pulsing with soft light that shifted through spectra beyond human perception. My private research facility, Azimuth explained, noting their wonder. Constructed within a pocket of stabilized space-time. We'll be safe from the distortions here. At least temporarily. What is this place? Eunice asked, reaching out to touch one of the crystal formations. It responded to her proximity, its light synchronizing with her movements. A laboratory dedicated to studying the fundamental forces that preceded the current universe, Azimuth replied. Energies that exist outside conventional space-time. Forces the Celeste. IAL sapiens manipulate but did not create. Ben's attention was drawn to a central platform where multiple holographic displays showed timeline projections, billions of potential realities branching in, deconverging in patterns too complex for human minds to fully comprehend. The multiverse, he breathed. A simplified representation, Azimuth corrected. The true complexity would break your mind. Regardless of your experience with the Omnitrix. He manipulated controls, zooming the display to focus on a particular nexus of timelines. This is our current crisis point. The Celestial Sapien Judgment. The hologram revealed countless timeline threads converging toward a single point, beyond which lay two distinctly different patterns, one showing rich, complex diversity, the other displaying fewer, more uniform threads. The potential outcomes, Eunice realized. Either preservation of timeline diversity or purification, Azimuth finished grimly. A cosmic simplification that the Celestial Sapiens call elegance and I call catastrophic short-sightedness. Ben studied the display, noting how certain timeline threads glowed more brightly than others. These timelines, they're weighted differently. Some matter more to the outcome. Azimuth's expression registered surprise, quickly masked. Your perception has improved. The Aurora Omnitrix is already enhancing your cognitive functions. He nodded toward the brightest thread. That is our primary timeline, the one you have shaped through your choices since discovering the original Omnitrix. And these others, variations, possibilities that branch from critical decision points. Azimuth's voice lowered, including timelines where you made different choices, became different versions of yourself, some better, some worse. Ben processed this, feeling the weight of responsibility grow heavier. And the Celestial Sapiens want to erase most of these variations. Why? Azimuth sighed, suddenly looking every millennium of his considerable age. Celestial sapiens exist beyond conventional reality. They perceive time differently, not as a linear progression but as a completed work. To them, the multiverse is like a vast, complex equation that should resolve elegantly. And they think it's too messy, Ben concluded. Precisely. Particularly the timelines involving your planet. Humanity is, Azimuth paused, searching for the right word. Unpredictable. Your species creates more timeline variations than most others. The celestial sapiens find this inefficient. Eunice, who had been studying the holographic display with intense focus, looked up sharply. But the Aurora Omnitrix wasn't created by celestial sapiens. It has your design signatures, Azimuth, but different. Evolved. The Galvan's expression grew guarded. You are correct. The Aurora Omnitrix represents a potential I theorized but never constructed, a device capable not just of transformation but of harmonization. The ability to synthesize different evolutionary paths into stable new configurations. But it exists now, Ben said, raising his wrist. The Chronosapiens called it a key to accessing and navigating the timelines under judgment. An oversimplification, Azimuth muttered, but not entirely inaccurate. He hopped from his hover platform onto the console, manipulating controls to change the display. The Aurora Omnitrix exists in a state of quantum indeterminacy. It both is and is not my creation, a potential pulled into actuality by the impending judgment. The hologram shifted to show the Aurora Omnitrix's internal structure. Infinitely more complex than the original device, with systems that seemed to fold through higher dimensions. Its core function, Azimuth continued, is to demonstrate the value in complexity. How that seemingly chaotic systems can achieve harmony without simplification. His gaze shifted to Eunice. Just as the evolved Omnitrix demonstrates that artificial life can develop true consciousness. When given the freedom to grow beyond its original programming. So were examples, Ben said, understanding dawning. Test cases to prove that diversity and complexity have value. More than examples. A new voice interjected from across the chamber. You're the defense in a cosmic trial. Ben turned toward the voice, surprise registering on his face as he recognized the woman emerging from a side corridor. Dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, skin bronzed by outdoor expeditions, eyes sharp with intelligence and determination. Kai Green had changed since their last meeting, but remained unmistakable. Kai, he asked, momentarily thrown by her unexpected presence. She approached with confident strides, stopping at a respectful distance. Her attire suggested fieldwork, practical clothing built for harsh environments, multiple equipment pouches at her belt. A xenoarchaeologist's tools. Commander Tennyson, she acknowledged professionally, then glanced at his companion. And this must be Eunice. Azimuth has explained your situation. Kai has been assisting my research, Azimuth explained. Her expertise in extinct alien civilizations proved valuable when studying artifacts from pre-celestial sapien eras. Ben absorbed this, noting the subtle tension in Kai's posture. Their history was complicated. A childhood crush that had evolved into a brief adult relationship. 4 professional paths had pulled them apart. Her rejection of his more serious intentions had stung at the time, though years of perspective had dulled the edge of that pain. I didn't expect to find you here, he said honestly. Likewise, Kai replied, her tone softening slightly. Though I'm not surprised you're at the center of another universe-altering crisis. Despite everything, Ben found himself smiling. Some things never change. The moment of reconnection was interrupted by a piercing alarm that reverberated through the chamber, crystalline formations pulsing red in response. Perimeter breach, Azimuth snapped. Fingers flying across controls. Something has penetrated the temporal stabilization field. Security feeds appeared on multiple displays, showing various corridors throughout the facility. One screen revealed the source of the alarm. A group of mechanical drones forcing their way through a sealed doorway, their design unmistakable to Ben. Psychobos, he growled, recognizing the cerebrocrustacean's distinctive technology. I should have known he'd be involved somehow. The Aurora Omnitrix's activation would have created energy signatures detectable to sufficiently advanced equipment. Azimuth explained, initiating security protocols. And Psychobos has been obsessively monitoring my facilities since your last encounter. We need to evacuate, Kai stated, already moving to a storage unit and retrieving what appeared to be weapons, though of distinctly archaeological design. Azimuth, the research data, is being transferred to secure storage, the Galvan finished. But you're right, this facility is compromised. He turned to Ben and Eunice. There's an emergency transport in the lower level. It can take us to my secondary laboratory. Ben exchanged glances with Eunice. Silent understanding passing between them. You three go. We'll handle Psychobos and his toys. Ben, Azimuth began, the Aurora Omnitrix is still calibrating to your biology. Using it in combat now could be unpredictable. Unpredictable is my specialty, Ben replied with a confidence born of years of experience. Besides, we need to test its capabilities sooner or later. Before Azimuth could object further, the facility shuddered as an explosion rocked a nearby corridor. More security feeds activated, showing drones pouring through the breach. Go, Ben urged. We'll meet you at the secondary lab. Quote, Azimuth hesitated, then nodded sharply. The coordinates are being transmitted to the Aurora Omnitrix now. Don't delay unnecessarily. His gaze shifted to Eunice. Your evolved systems should interface directly with the Aurora Omnitrix. The connection will be intense. I understand, Eunice replied, stepping closer to Ben. Kai paused before following Azimuth, her expression complex. Be careful, Ben. These aren't ordinary drones, they're temporal disruptors. Psychobos has been experimenting with chronosapian technology. Noted, Ben acknowledged. Take care of Azimuth. With a final nod, Kai followed the Galvan through a concealed exit, leaving Ben and Eunice facing the approaching threat. Ready for this? Ben asked, activating the Aurora Omnitrix. Its interface responded with fluid precision, displaying not the familiar alien silhouettes but a complex matrix of genetic traits and combinations. I was literally made for this, Eunice replied with a small smile. Moving to stand back to back with him as the sounds of mechanical intruders grew closer. Ben studied the new interface, understanding it intuitively despite its complexity. Rather than selecting a complete alien form, he could now choose specific traits to synthesize with his human baseline. For this situation, he needed strength, durability, and ranged attack capabilities. He selected traits from Tetraman DNA for enhanced strength, Petrosapian crystalline structure for durability, and Pyronite thermal generation for offensive capability. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed in acknowledgement, energy flowing over his body as the transformation began. Unlike previous transformations, Ben remained conscious throughout the process, feeling each change as it occurred, muscles densifying. Skeletal structure reinforcing with crystalline matrices, thermal regulation systems developing beneath his skin. When the transformation completed, he retained his human appearance but, with subtle alterations, his skin had a faint crystalline sheen, muscles more defined, hands emanating controlled heat that warped the air around them. Impressive, Eunice noted, observing the changes. Ben flexed his hands, feeling the power coursing through them. Your turn, Eunice nodded, reaching out to touch the Aurora Omnitrix on his wrist. The device responded instantly, energy flowing between them. Rather than transforming as Ben had, Eunice's body adapted differently, her Omnitrix origins allowing her to absorb and integrate traits without external transformation. Her eyes glowed briefly, skin taking on a subtle metallic sheen as she incorporated aspects of galvanic mechamorph technology. Neural interface established, she reported, voice slightly modulated. I can sense the drones, communication network. 28 units, 3 distinct types, coordinated by a central intelligence. Psychobos himself, Ben asked, moving toward the corridor where the drones would soon breach the inner chamber. No, Eunice frowned. Something different. A hybrid system, partly biological, partly mechanical. She looked up sharply. They're here. The reinforced door at the corridor's end exploded inward, smoke and debris filling the entryway. Through the haze came the first wave of drones, spider-like constructs with multiple limbs ending in various weapons. They moved with eerie coordination, immediately spreading out to flank the defenders. Ben didn't wait for them to complete their maneuver. Channeling the pyronite energy synthesized into his form, he thrust his hands forward, releasing a concentrated blast of heat that melted the 2 lead drones into slag. The remaining units adapted instantly, ceiling-mounted units deploying energy shields while others began impulse weapons from behind this protection. They're learning, Ben noted, diving behind a crystalline formation for cover. Adaptive tactical programming, Eunice confirmed, her transformed hand morphing into interface tools that she pressed against a nearby console. I'm attempting to disrupt their network. Energy blasts impacted around them, the drones advancing methodically. Ben analyzed their pattern, identifying the command unit coordinating their movements, a larger drone hanging back near the doorway, its structure more complex than the others. "Cover me," he told Eunice, then charged from behind cover. Crystalline skin deflecting energy blasts as he plowed through the front line of drones. The machines reacted with mechanical precision, adjusting their attack vectors to surround him. Ben smiled grimly, channeling more pyronite energy through his crystalline structure. The combination created an unexpected effect, his entire body erupting in crystalline flames that spread outward in a controlled wave, shorting out the nearest drone's systems. The command unit responded immediately, emitting a high-frequency pulse that disrupted Ben's concentration. Pain lanced through his head as the pulse interfered with the Aurora Omnitrix's integration of his synthesized form. "Ben," Eunice called out, witnessing his distress. Her hands transformed into energy projectors, firing targeted electromagnetic pulses that disabled several attacking drones. The command unit is using cerebrocrustacean neural disruptors. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Ben pushed forward, each step requiring conscious effort as the neural disruptor fought to separate his synthesized form into its component parts. He felt the Aurora Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, attempting to stabilize the integration. Then, unexpectedly, the device responded to his determination, to his emotional state rather than his conscious command. New energy flowed through him, incorporating galvanic mech, amorph adaptive properties that counteracted the neural disruption. The pain receded, replaced by focused clarity. With renewed strength, Ben lunged at the command unit, which attempted to retreat through the doorway. His crystalline hand, now laced with adaptive techno-organic patterns, seized the drone and crushed its central processor. The effect on the remaining drones was immediate, their coordinated attack pattern dissolving into disjointed individual responses that Eunice easily neutralized through the facility's security systems. That was. Ben paused, studying his transformed ND where mechamorph patterns faded back into crystalline structure. The Aurora Omnitrix responded to my emotional state. Adapted without conscious command. Eunice approached, her own transformations reverting to baseline. "It's evolving with you, learning your patterns." She smiled slightly, not unlike what happened with me. Before Ben could respond, the facility rocked with another, larger explosion, this one from deeper within the complex. "That wasn't drones," he stated, already moving toward the source. "Something bigger just breached the lower levels." They raced through corridors, bearing signs of drone infiltration, shattered equipment, disabled security measures, scattered research materials. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed with increasing urgency as they descended, sensing whatever had caused the disturbance. The lower laboratory level opened before them, revealing devastation, and its cause. Floating amid the wreckage was a cybernetically enhanced figure Ben recognized despite significant modifications. "Tennyson, Dr. Psychobos greeted, his cerebrocrustacean form now augmented with mechanical components that extended his natural exoskeleton. "Your arrival was predicted to statistical certainty." "Psychobos," Ben acknowledged coldly. "Still stealing other people's research? Or have you developed an original thought since our last meeting?" The enhanced cerebrocrustacean's cranial plates opened, revealing a brain now partially merged with cybernetic components. Originality is overrated when one can improve upon flawed concepts." His mechanical limbs gestured to the destroyed laboratory. Azimuth's research into temporal mechanics was ambitious but fundamentally lacking in vision. "And what would you know about vision?" Ben challenged, subtly positive, awning himself to shield the chamber's central console, which, he noticed, was still active despite the destruction around it. "More than any being in this pathetic timeline," Psychobos replied, "me." Chanical legs advancing with unsettling precision. "I have glimpsed the elegance of simplification. The Celestial Sapien's judgment is merely the beginning." Ben's eyes narrowed. "You're working with the Celestial Sapiens." Psychobos laughed, the sound disturbingly modulated by his cybernetic components. "With them? No. Their limited perspective is nearly as disappointing as Azimuth's. But their actions create opportunities for those with sufficient intellect to exploit." He's stalling. Eunice whispered, her enhanced senses detecting subtle energy fluctuations around the central console. Something's downloading from the main system. Ben nodded imperceptibly, then stepped forward, drawing Psychobos's attention. Let me guess. You're hoping to position yourself favorably in whatever reality emerges from the judgment. Typical Psychobos, always trying to ride someone else's cosmic wave. The cerebrocrustacean's eye twitched with genuine anger. Your infantile mockery merely confirms your failure to comprehend the situation's magnitude. His gaze fixed on the Aurora Omnitrix. That device was never meant to exist in this timeline. Its presence is an aberration, one I intend to CC correct. Funny, Ben replied, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing in response to his rising determination. Everyone keeps telling me what's supposed to exist or not exist. I'm getting tired of cosmic entities making those decisions. Your fatigue is irrelevant, Psychobos stated, mechanical limbs reconfiguring into weapons. The Aurora Omnitrix will be disassembled and studied. Its components will serve a greater purpose in my improved design. Ben smiled thinly. You'll have to take it from me first. A trivial challenge, Psychobos responded, firing a concentrated neural disruptor beam directly at Ben. This time, Ben was prepared. Drawing on the Aurora Omnitrix's responsiveness to his emotional state, he channeled determination and protective instinct, guiding the device. To synthesize appropriate traits, conductoid energy absorption, chronosepian temporal resistance, and galvan neural processing speed. The transformation was nearly instantaneous, his body adapting to absorb and redirect the neural disruptor beam. Energy coursed through him, momentarily visible as circuit-like patterns beneath his skin before he redirected it into the floor, grounding the attack harmlessly. Psychobos's eyes widened fractionally, the closest thing to surprise his cybernetic face could express. Interesting. Your control of the Aurora Omnitrix exceeds preliminary calculations. You have no idea what I can do with it, Ben replied, though the truth was neither did he. The device's capabilities were revealing themselves in the moment, responding to necessity and emotion rather than conscious command. Eunice, meanwhile, had circled behind the central console, her hands interfacing directly with its systems. Ben, she called, he's extracting data on the Aurora Omnitrix's quantum structure. If he completes the download. She never finished the sentence. Psychobos whirled with mechanical speed, firing a secondary weapon that enveloped Eunice in crackling energy. She cried out, her form destabilizing as the attack interfered with her evolved Omnitrix functions. Something snapped inside Ben at the sight of Eunice in pain. The Aurora Omnitrix flared in response, energy cascading over his body as multiple alien traits synthesized simultaneously without conscious selection, driven purely by emotional response. His form shifted more dramatically than before, incorporating elements of a dozen different species in perfect harmony. The transformation complete, Ben moved with blinding speed, crossing the chamber before Psychobos could react. A fist enhanced with Tetraman strength and Petrosepian durability smashed through the cerebrocrustacean's defensive shield. Conductoid antennae extended from Ben's shoulders, absorbing and neutralizing Psychobos's energy weapons. Impossible. The cybernetically enhanced villain sputtered as Ben lifted him by his mechanical exoskeleton. The Omnitrix cannot integrate multiple species simultaneously without catastrophic genetic destabilization. The Aurora Omnitrix can, Ben stated, voice resonating with harmonized energy. And it doesn't appreciate you attacking Eunice. With precisely controlled force, Ben crushed the neural transmitter at the center of Psychobos's cybernetic enhancements, then tore the mechanical components from his exoskeleton one by one. The cerebrocrustacean struggled futilely, his technological advantages neutralized by Ben's synthesized capabilities. When he finished, Psychobos hung limply in his grasp, reduced to his baseline form with only minimal augmentations remaining. Enough to maintain vital functions but nothing more. Why you don't understand what you've interfered with, Psychobos hissed, genuine fear replacing his usual arrogance. The data I've accumulated, the patterns I've identified, the judgment is merely phase 1. Ben dropped the defeated villain unceremoniously. Save it for your cell in the null void. I've heard enough doomsday monologues to last several lifetimes. He turned to Eunice, concern overriding everything else as his transformation receded, returning him to baseline human form. She was recovering, her system stabilizing as she pushed herself to a sitting position. "Are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded, offering a weak smile. "My systems are resilient." But her expression grew troubled. "Ben, I managed to see what Psychobos was downloading. It wasn't just data about the Aurora Omnitrix, it was information about timeline convergence points. Specific coordinates in space-time where the judgment will be most vulnerable." Ben helped her to her feet, mind racing with implications. "He's looking for a way to influence the outcome. To push the celestial sapiens toward purification." "Worse," Eunice replied. "I think he's looking for a way to hijack the process entirely." She glanced at the defeated cerebrocrustacean. But he didn't get everything he came for. The final coordinates were stored separately. A slow clap interrupted their conversation, echoing from the chamber entrance. Ben whirled to find Kai standing there, an impressed expression on her face. "Nice work," she commented, entering cautiously. "Though you left quite a mess for the cleanup crew." "Kai," Ben acknowledged, tension easing slightly. "Where's Azimuth?" "Safe. At the secondary lab." She approached, studying the D.E-feeded Psychobos with professional interest. "When we detected the breach in the lower level, I came back to secure any exposed artifacts." Her eyes met Ben's. "Didn't expect to find you had things so well in hand." There was something in her tone, a mixture of admiration and something else Ben couldn't quite identify. Their history hung between them, unaddressed but impossible to ignore. The Aurora Omnitrix responded to Ben's emotional state, Eunice explained, looking between them with perceptive eyes. "When Psychobos attacked me, it synthesized multiple alien traits simultaneously." Kai's eyebrows rose. Emotional responsiveness wasn't part of the original Omnitrix design. She studied Ben with renewed interest. "That's significant." Speaking of significant, Ben redirected, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. Psychobos was after specific temporal coordinates. Places where the celestial sapien judgment might be vulnerable to outside influence. Kai's expression shifted to alarmed focus. "We need to tell Azimuth immediately." She activated a communication device on her wrist. "The secondary lab is across the city, we'll need transport." "I think I can help with that," Ben said, examining the Aurora Omnitrix. Its interface had changed again, displaying new configuration options that seemed to respond to his thoughts as much as his touch. Focusing on transportation needs, he selected traits from Kinesolaran speed, Necrophrygian intangibility, and Galvanic Mechamorph technological integration. The transformation was smoother this time, his body adapting to the synthesis with practiced ease. When it completed, he remained humanoid but with sleek, adaptive features, skin with a faint blue-black sheen, eyes glowing with accelerated perception, limbs reconfigured for optimal speed and maneuverability. "Impressive," Kai commented, professional admiration evident. Ben approached Eunice, who automatically reached for the Aurora Omnitrix, establishing their connection. As before, she adapted differently, her evolved Omnitrix nature allowing her to integrate complementary traits that enhanced rather than mirrored his own. "What about him?" Eunice asked, nodding toward the subdued Psychobos. Kai produced a containment device from her equipment pouches. "This will hold him temporarily. Azimuth can arrange proper incarceration when we reach the secondary lab." Once Psychobos was secured, Ben turned to the others. "Hold on. This might feel strange." Kai stepped close, professional composure momentarily slipping as Ben wrapped an arm around her waist. Eunice took his other hand, their connection strengthening through direct contact. Ben concentrated, channeling the synthesized abilities. Their forms became partially intangible, molecular structures accelerating to bypass conventional physical limitations. The sensation was disorienting but exhilarating, moving not just with speed but with altered physical properties that allowed them to pass through solid matter where necessary. They streaked through Galvan Prime's infrastructure, navigating the temporal distortions with Ben's enhanced perception guiding them. The city blurred around them, building NGS phasing in and out of temporal sync as the celestial sapiens continued their assessment. "There," Kai called, pointing toward a modest structure nestled among larger facilities. "That's the entrance to the secondary lab." Ben decelerated gradually, allowing their molecules to restabilize as they approached the designated building. As they solidified fully, he noticed Kai's expression, a mixture of amazement and something that might have been regret. "That was," she began, then shook her head. I've studied dozens of alien transportation methods, but nothing quite like that. The Aurora Omnitrix creates unique combinations. Eunice explained as Ben's transformation receded. Traits that complement each other in ways individual alien forms can't achieve. A hidden door in the building's side slid open, revealing Azimuth waiting impatiently. Finally, the Galvan creator huffed. While you were engaging in unnecessary combat, I've been analyzing the temporal distortions. They're intensifying at an alarming rate. They followed him into a laboratory that, while smaller than the previous facility, contained equally advanced technology. Multiple displays showed real-time data O.F. timeline fluctuations throughout the galaxy. The cerebrocrustation has been contained, Azimuth asked, noting the device in Kai's hand. Neutralized and ready for proper incarceration, she confirmed, placing the container in a designated security unit. Good. His interference was predictable but inconvenient. Azimuth hopped onto a central console, manipulating controls with practiced efficiency. Now, let me see what's become of my greatest creation, and its unintended evolution. Ben extended his wrist, allowing Azimuth to scan the Aurora Omnitrix with specialized equipment. The Galvan's eyes widened as data flowed across his screens. Extraordinary, he murmured, genuine awe replacing his usual critical tone. The quantum reconfiguration is far more extensive than I predicted. The device has transcended its original design parameters entirely. Psychobos said it was never meant to exist in this timeline, Ben noted. What did he mean by that? Azimuth's expression grew guarded. The Aurora Omnitrix represents a potential future development of the Omnitrix technology, one that would naturally evolve over centuries of use and refinement. He looked up at Ben. Its appearance now, fully formed, suggests timeline manipulation beyond even Celestial Sapien standard practice. Someone broke the rules, Kai interpreted, leaning against a nearby workbench. Brought future technology into the present. Not someone, Azimuth corrected. Something. A temporal resonance effect created by the announcement of the judgment itself. He gestured to a display showing timeline convergence patterns. When the Celestial Sapiens began their assessment, they created paradoxical conditions, evaluating timelines that contain technologies which only exist because of their evaluation. Ben's brow furrowed. You're saying the Aurora Omnitrix exists because the Celestial Sapiens started judging timelines where it eventually would exist. Precisely, Azimuth confirmed. A self-fulfilling temporal loop. Elegantly paradoxical. Quote, and Eunice? Ben asked, glancing at his companion, who had been quietly interfacing with the laboratory's systems. Her evolution is connected to this paradox. The Omnitrix was always designed with evolutionary potential, Azimuth explained, his tone softening slightly. Given sufficient time and the right conditions, her development into a fully autonomous, self-aware being was inevitable. He paused, adding more quietly, it was, in fact, the original intent, before certain complications arose. Eunice looked up sharply. You designed me to evolve consciousness from the beginning. I thought I was just meant to be a DNA storage unit. Your primary function, yes, Azimuth acknowledged. But with secondary directives buried in your core program. MMING, dormant evolutionary algorithms that would activate under specific conditions. His ancient eyes held something like regret. Conditions I never expected to manifest in my lifetime. The revelation hung in the air. Eunice processing its implications while Ben watched her with concern. Before either could respond further, the laboratory's sensors emitted a piercing alarm. Temporal distortion spike, Azimuth announced. Fingers flying across controls. Massive reality fluctuation detected in Sector 7, the historical archives. Kai moved to another console. The archives contain records dating back to pre-Galvan civilization. Artifacts from species that existed before the current universe's configuration. Precisely why they would be targeted, Azimuth stated grimly. Those CTS contain information about the fundamental forces that preceded the Celestial Sapiens, forces they would prefer remained forgotten. Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, resonating with the temporal distortion. We need to get to those archives. Too dangerous, Azimuth objected. The temporal instability in that sector is approaching critical levels. Even the Aurora Omnitrix cannot guarantee your safety. I'm not asking for guarantees, Ben replied, years of experience evident in his calm resolve. But those archives might contain information we need about the judgment, about how to influence it. Kai stepped forward. I'll go with him. I've studied those archives extensively. I know exactly which artifacts would be most valuable. Azimuth hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. The girl is correct. Her xenoarchaeological expertise would be useful. He turned to Eunice. You should remain here. Your systems need time to stabilize after Psychobos's attack, and I require assistance calibrating these sensors to track the Aurora Omnitrix's quantum signature. Ben glanced at Eunice, concerned about leaving her but recognizing the logic in Azimuth's request. Will you be okay? She nodded, offering a reassuring smile. My systems are already recalibrating. And working with Azimuth will help me understand my own evolution better. Her eyes met his, a wealth of unspoken communication passing between them. Be careful, Ben. The temporal distortions will affect your connection to the Aurora Omnitrix. When am I not careful? He asked with a half-smile. Historical data suggests. Never, would be the accurate response, she replied, returning his smile. Kai watched their exchange with an unreadable expression before gathering equipment from a nearby storage unit. We should move quickly. The distortions are intensifying. Azimuth activated a wall panel, revealing specialized equipment. Take these temporal stabilizers. They won't prevent all effects, they should keep your molecular structure coherent. He fixed Ben with a serious gaze. And Tennyson, the Aurora Omnitrix's emotional responsiveness is both its greatest strength and its greatest vulnerability. Remember that. Ben nodded, accepting the cryptic warning as Kai attached a stabilizer to his wrist opposite the Aurora Omnitrix. The archives are on the other side of the temporal distortion zone, she explained. Activating her own stabilizer. We'll need to move fast and stick together. Once we're inside, follow my lead. I know exactly where the relevant artifacts are stored. Yes, ma'am, Ben replied with a hint of teasing in his tone. Kai's authoritative confidence had always been one of her more attractive qualities, even when it occasionally clashed with his own. She shot him a look that was half irritation, half amusement. Just try to keep up, Tennyson. They exited through a specialized airlock designed to maintain temporal coherence between zones of different stability. Beyond it lay Galvan Prime's exterior, now almost unrecognizable as reality fluctuations intensified. Buildings phased between architectural styles, some appearing partially transparent while others seemed impossibly solid. The sky above shifted through multiple atmospheric configurations, stars visible in some patches while others showed daylight conditions. This is worse than I expected, Kai murmured, consulting a device on her wrist. The archive complex is 2 kilometers northeast, but the path between is highly unstable. Ben studied the chaotic landscape, then activated the Aurora Omnitrix. I think I can get us through safely, but I'll need to try something new. The interface responded to his touch, displaying genetic traits with temporal resistance properties. Ben selected carefully. Chronosapian temporal manipulation, limited Galvan intelligence, and celestial sapian stability, minimal aspect. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed in acknowledgement, the transformation spreading over him with practiced fluidity. This synthesis created more profound changes than previous ones, his skin taking on a dark, Starfield-like quality reminiscent of a celestial sapien, though without the cosmic horns or fully alien appearance. Chronosapian mechanisms manifested within his chest, visible as clockwork patterns beneath the star-flecked surface of his skin. His mind expanded with Galvan intellect, processing temporal mathematics instinctively. Ben, Kai asked uncertainly, studying his transformed appearance. Still me, he assured her, voice carrying harmonized undertones. Just with some upgrades for temporal navigation. He extended his hand. Stay close. I can create a bubble of stable space-time around us, but it has limits. Kai took his hand without hesitation, her professional demeanor momentarily giving way to trust. Lead the way. Ben concentrated, channeling the synthesized abilities to generate a field of temporal stability around them. The distortions surrounding them remained visible but no longer affected their immediate vicinity, like standing in the eye of a reality storm. They moved forward, Ben carefully navigating the chaotic landscape. Buildings and structures wavered around them, sometimes existing in multiple states simultaneously, under construction, complete, abandoned, and rebuilt, all overlapping in temporal dissonance. The celestial sapiens aren't just assessing, Kai observed as they progressed. They're actively experimenting with different timeline configurations. Ben nodded, focus split between maintaining their proto-seative field and navigating the increasingly unstable environment. Testing what happens when they change variables. Like scientists with a cosmic petri dish. Cold way of looking at existence, Kai commented. Her free hand resting near a weapon holstered at her hip, a precaution against whatever might lurk in the temporal chaos. That's the problem, Ben agreed. They see patterns and equations where we see lives and choices. They passed a plaza where Galvan citizens stood frozen in various time states, some mid-motion, others existing as translucent afterimages of potential movements. Ben felt a surge of protective anger at the sight, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing in response to his emotion. The archives are just ahead, Kai said, pointing toward a monolithic structure that remained more stable than its surroundings, constructed of materials specifically designed to resist temporal manipulation. As they approached the massive entrance, Ben noticed something odd. Unlike the chaotic distortions affecting the rest of Galvan Prime, the archives were experiencing a different kind of temporal effect. Rather than random fluctuations, deliberate patterns rippled across its surface. So, Neon's actively manipulating the temporal field around the building, he realized aloud. This isn't just celestial sapien assessment. Kai's expression hardened. Psychobos must have sent additional forces before we captured him. Or he was working with someone else, Ben suggested, studying the patterns with his enhanced perception. These manipulations are too precise for drones. They react. Head the archive entrance, a massive door carved with Galvan historical symbols, currently phasing between multiple states of security lockdown. Ben channeled more energy into stabilizing their immediate vicinity, allowing Kai to access the security panel with her research credentials. My clearance should still work, assuming the security system is temporally stable enough to process it, she muttered, interfacing with the panel. After several tense moments, the massive door shuttered and began to open. Beyond lay the vast archive complex, a space that seemed larger inside than physically possible. Stretching into impossible distances, rows upon rows of preservation units contained artifacts from throughout galactic history, carefully categorized and maintained in specialized containment fields. The pre-celestial sapien artifacts are in the restricted section, Kai explained, leading the way deeper into the complex. Most Galvan don't even know they exist. As they navigated the labyrinthine archive, Ben maintained their temporal stability field while scanning for threats. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed with increasing frequency as they approached the restricted section, resonating WITH energies preserved within the ancient artifacts. Here, Kai announced, stopping before a sealed vault door that bore markings unlike any Galvan script Ben had seen. This section predates modern Galvan civilization. Azimuth's predecessor discovered these artifacts and established the original archive to preserve them. She placed her palm against a recognition panel, then entered a complex code sequence. Azimuth granted me access when I began researching the celestial sapien judgment theories. The vault door receded, revealing a chamber that defied conventional physics. Objects hung suspended in preservation fields, many emitting energies that distorted the space around them. Unlike the organized preservation units in the main archive, these artifacts seemed almost alive, pulsing with energies that the containment fields barely restrained. These objects, Ben breathed, sensing their power through his synthesized celestial sapien aspect. They're not just artifacts. They're fragments of something. Exactly, Kai confirmed, moving with practiced caution among the displays. According to the oldest Galvan records, these are remnants of what existed before the current universe, before the celestial sapiens. Some theorize they're pieces of previous reality configurations that survived the transition. The Aurora Omnitrix's pulsing intensified as they moved deeper into the vault. Responding specifically to an artifact at the chamber's center, a crystalline structure that constantly shifted between multiple geometric configurations, never settling on a single form. That's what we came for, Kai stated. Approaching the shifting crystal, the multiform resonator, Azimuth believes it can predict how timeline purification would progress, showing which realities would be eliminated first. As they neared the artifact, Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix's response grow stronger, not just pulsing now but actively reaching out, tendrils of energy extending toward the resonator. It recognizes the artifact, he realized, or the artifact recognizes it. That shouldn't be possible, Kai said, scientific curiosity overriding caution. The resonator predates the concept of the Omnitrix by billions of years. Before Ben could respond, a voice called from the vault entrance, familiar but distorted, layered with electronic modulation. Yet another miscalculation from the esteemed Kai Green. Disappointing, but not surprising. They turned to find a figure silhouetted in the doorway, humanoid but wrong somehow, proportions subtly altered and movement unnaturally fluid. As it stepped into the light, Ben recognized the face despite its cybernetic modifications. Elena, he said, genuine shock breaking through his composed exterior. Elena Validus, the woman who bore only passing resemblance to the plumber cadet Ben had known years ago. Her body was visibly integrated with technology, not crude cybernetic attachments like psychobos, but seamless merging of biological and mechanical components. Nanites swarmed across her skin in controlled patterns, eyes glowing with internal processing power. "Hello, Ben," she greeted, voice maintaining some of its original quality beneath the electronic overlay. "You're looking well. The Aurora Omnitrix suits you." "You know about the Aurora Omnitrix," Ben stated rather than asked, positioning himself protect for Ely between Elena and both Kai and the artifacts. "You're working with psychobos." Elena laughed, the sound disconcertingly harmonic. "With that neurotic crustacean?" "Hardly. He serves his purpose, but our goals merely aligned temporarily." Her gaze shifted to the multiform resonator. "As did my purpose with that artifact." Kai had drawn her weapon, a specialized energy disruptor designed for artifact recovery operations. "How did you get clearance for this vault?" "This area is restricted to senior researchers." "Clearance?" Elena's expression registered something between amusement and pity. Quote, "My nanites can interface with any security system in existence. Galvan technology is impressive, but ultimately just another pattern to be assimilated and improved." Ben studied her, noting how the nanites comprising much of her body moved with purposeful intelligence rather than the mindless swarm he remembered from their previous encounters. "You've changed, Elena. Last I heard, you were in a specialized medical facility. Recovering from the nanochip infection." "Recovering?" Elena's expression hardened. "Is that what the official plumber reports said? How sanitized?" She stepped further into the vault, nanites extending from her fingertips to interface with nearby systems. "I wasn't recovering, Ben. I was evolving, becoming something beyond human limitations, just as you are now with the Aurora Omnitrix." The comparison sent an uneasy chill through Ben. "What do you want with the resonator?" "The same thing you do," Elena replied simply. "Information about the Celestial Sapian judgment. About which timelines they value and which they consider expendable." Her eyes fixed on the Aurora Omnitrix. "But while you seek to preserve their flawed system, I intend to transcend it entirely." Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, not in response to the artifacts now, but to his emotional reaction to Elena's presence. A warning, perhaps, or preparation for conflict. Judgment isn't something you can hack or reprogram, Elena," he said, maintaining the temporal stability field around them with increasing effort. "We're talking about fundamental alterations to reality itself." "Reality is just another system, Ben," Elena countered, nanites forming complex tools from her arms. "Systems can be understood, infiltrated, and reprogrammed. Even those created by Celestial Sapiens." She moved with startling speed, nanite extensions shooting toward the resonator. Ben reacted instantly, channeling energy through his synthesized form to intercept them. The collision created a shower of temporal distortion, reality fracturing around the point of impact. "Ben," Kai called in warning, her scanner displaying alarming readings. "The temporal field is destabilizing. We need to secure the artifacts and leave." Elena took advantage of the distraction, secondary nanite tendrils snaking along the floor to access other preservation units. "You always did focus on the immediate threat, Ben. Missing the larger strategy." Realizing her intent, Ben divided his attention, maintaining the temporal field while simultaneously engaging Elena's nanite extensions. The effort strained his synthesized form, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing rapidly as it adjusted to compensate. "Kai, secure the resonator," he called, channeling celestial sapien energy to create a barrier between Elena and the central artifact. Kai moved instantly, applying a portable containment device to the resonator while keeping her weapon trained on Elena. "What are your nanites trying to access?" she demanded, scientific curiosity evident despite the tension. "Information you've overlooked," Elena replied, not bothering to conceal her actions now that they were discovered. "The resonator isn't just a predictive tool, it's a key. These artifacts collectively form a map to the nexus points where reality itself is constructed." Ben recognized the dangerous gleam in her eyes, not malice exactly, but the single-minded determination of someone convinced of their righteous cause regardless of consequences. "Elena, whatever you're planning, it's too risky. The celestial sapien judgment is dangerous enough without outside interference." "Interference?" she echoed, genuine anger flashing across her features. "Is that what you call fighting for survival? For autonomy?" The nanites comprising her body rippled with emotion. "The celestial sapiens view us as equations to be simplified. I refuse to be reduced to their cosmic rounding error." As she spoke, her nanites successfully breached several artifact containment fields, absorbing data directly from the ancient objects. The archive's alarm systems activated, though the sound warped strangely through the temporal distortions. Kai finished securing the resonator, the portable containment unit humming as it stabilized the shifting crystal. "We need to go, Ben. The temporal fluctuations are intensifying." He nodded, never taking his eyes off Elena. "You should come with us. Whatever you've learned, whatever you're planning, we can figure it out together." Something flickered in Elena's expression, a momentary softening, perhaps recognition of their shared history. But it hardened again almost immediately. "We're beyond that point, Ben," she replied, her nanites beginning to withdraw from the artifacts, having obtained whatever information they sought. "The judgment approaches faster than even Azimuth realizes. Choices must be made." The vault shuddered as a massive temporal distortion rippled through the archive complex. Ben struggled to maintain their protective field, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing with increasing urgency. "The building's temporal anchors are failing," Kai reported, checking her scanner. "We have minutes, at most, before this entire section detaches from conventional space-time." Elena backed toward the exit, nanites swirling protectively around her. "Consider this, Ben, what if the celestial sapiens aren't the only ones who can judge? What if we created our own reality instead of accepting theirs?" Her form began to dissolve into a nanite cloud. "We'll meet again soon, when you understand what's really at stake." With those words, she disappeared, her nanite form streaming through microscopic gaps in the vault structure, escaping into the temporal chaos beyond. Ben turned to Kai, who clutched the contained resonator protectively. "We need to get back to Azimuth. Now." She nodded, face set with determination despite the fear evident in her eyes. "The main exit will be compromised by now. There's an emergency transport tube in the lower level. If it's still temporally aligned, it should take us directly to Azimuth's secondary lab." Ben concentrated, channeling more energy into their prot-seative field as they navigated through the increasingly unstable archive. The synthesized celestial sapien and chronosapien traits strained to maintain temporal coherence as reality fractured around them. They reached the lower level to find the emergency transport tube, a direct matter transmission system, flickering between operational and non-existent states as temporal waves washed over it. "It's unstable," Kai noted, scanning the system with her equipment. "But I might be able to synchronize it with our temporal stabilizers." As she worked on the transport controls, Ben maintained their protective field, mind racing with implications of Elena's appearance and goals. The mention of creating their own reality carried ominous undertones, especially from someone with her technological capabilities. "Got it," Kai announced as the transport tube stabilized into a single temporal state. "We have about 20 seconds before the next fluctuation wave." They entered the tube together, Ben still maintaining their protective field as Kai activated the transport sequence. As the system engaged, Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix pulse one final time, almost a warning. The transportation process initiated, their molecular structures converting to energy for transmission through specialized conduits. Under normal circumstances, the journey would be instantaneous and imperceptible to human consciousness. These were not normal circumstances. Midway through transport, Their energy patterns encountered a massive temporal distortion, one too powerful for even their stabilizers to fully compensate for. Ben felt his consciousness stretched across multiple potential states, the Aurora Omnitrix struggling to maintain his coherence. In that fractured moment, he experienced something extraordinary, glimpses of timeline variations flowing around him like streams of possibility. He saw versions of himself that had made different choices, lived different lives. And more disturbingly, he saw gaps where timelines had already been erased, empty spaces in the fabric of reality. The transport completed with a jarring reconfiguration, their bodies rematerializing in Azimuth's secondary laboratory. Ben staggered as his synthesized form reverted to human, the Aurora Omnitrix powering down with an exhausted pulse. Eunice was at his side immediately, supporting him as his legs threatened to buckle. What happened? Your quantum signature was fluctuating wildly during transport. Kai remained standing through sheer force of will, still clutching the contained resonator. Temporal distortion mid-transport, she explained tersely. And we had company at the archives. Azimuth hopped down from his console, approaching with unusual concern. You encountered interference. Psychobos's drones. Elena Validus. Ben corrected, regaining his composure with Eunice's support. But not like we've seen her before. She's fully integrated with nanite technology now, and she knows about the Celestial Sapien judgment. About the Aurora Omnitrix. Azimuth's expression darkened. The nanochip human. Her transformation was unexpected. A variable I failed to calculate. She was extracting data from multiple artifacts. Kai added, carefully placing the resonator in a designated containment unit. She said something about the artifacts collectively forming a map to reality's construction points. Nexus coordinates, Azimuth muttered, visibly troubled. If she's identified those, he trailed off, turning abruptly to examine the resonator. This may be worse than I anticipated. Ben exchanged glances with Eunice, whose concerned expression mirrored his own thoughts. What exactly are Nexus coordinates, Azimuth? And why would Elena want them? The Galvan creator was silent for a long moment, studying the shifting crystal with ancient, troubled eyes. There are points in space-time where reality is thinner, more malleable, where the fundamental forces that shape existence converge and can be influenced. Like cosmic pressure points, Eunice suggested, her evolved Omnitrix intelligence grasping the concept. A simplified but not inaccurate analogy, Azimuth acknowledged. The Celestial Sapiens use these points to implement large-scale reality adjustments, such as the judgment they now contemplate. And Elena thinks she can use them too, Ben concluded grimly. To create her own reality instead of accepting theirs, those were her exact words. Azimuth's expression grew more troubled still. Impossible. No technology could manipulate those forces without. He stopped suddenly, eyes widening in realization. Unless what? Kai prompted, cleaning a cut on her arm sustained during their hasty retreat. Unless she's found a way to synthesize Nani-Te technology with chronosapien temporal mechanics, Azimuth finished. Creating, in essence, a technological equivalent to certain Celestial Sapien abilities. The implications hung heavy in the air. Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix warm against his wrist, responding to his growing concern. During the transport, he said slowly, when we hit that temporal distortion, I saw something. Timeline variations, different versions of reality. He met Azimuth's gaze directly. And gaps where timelines had been erased. The Galvan nodded gravely. The judgment has already begun. Preliminary purification of what they consider redundant variations. They're killing entire realities without even finishing their assessment. Ben asked, anger rising. Celestial Sapiens do not perceive time linearly, Azimuth reminded him. To them, the judgment is simultaneously beginning, ongoing, and concluded. He gestured to the laboratory's temporal monitors. What we're experiencing is the ripple effect as their decision propagates through conventional space-time. Eunice, who had been quietly processing these revelations, looked up suddenly. The Aurora Omnitrix responded unusually during your mission. I detected quantum fluctuations that shouldn't have been possible given its current calibration state. Ben glanced at the device, its surface still shifting with Aurora-like patterns. It responded to M.Y emotional state when Elena attacked, synthesized multiple traits simultaneously without conscious selection. More than that, Eunice continued, excitement breaking through her concern. It was attempting to establish timeline bridges, connections between variations being assessed for purification. Azimuth's eyes widened. Already, that function shouldn't activate until full synchronization is achieved. Synchronization with what? Ben asked, though something in his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. Azimuth and Eunice exchanged glances before the Galvan responded. With Eunice, the Aurora Omnitrix and the evolved Omnitrix are complementary systems, one manipulating physical reality, the other biological evolution. Together, they form a matrix capable of demonstrating viable harmonic alternatives to purification. Kai watched this exchange with scientific interest. You designed them as a pair from the beginning, as a contingency against celestial sapien intervention. Not exactly, Azimuth admitted. The potential was there in the original designs, but their current evolution, their appearance now, in this specific configuration, that was not my doing. His ancient eyes held a rare humility. Some patterns emerge from the system itself, beyond even the designer's intentions. The laboratory fell silent as they absorbed this revelation. Ben felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier, tempered by a strange sense of rightness, as if pieces of a cosmic puzzle were finally aligning. So what's our next move? He asked finally, looking from Azimuth to Eunice to Kai. How do we stop the judgment, or at least influence it toward harmony instead of purification? Azimuth turned to the resonator, now stabilized in its containment unit. This artifact can show us which timelines are most vulnerable, which will be purified first if we don't intervene. And how exactly do we intervene? Kai asked, the practical question hanging in the air. We demonstrate the value of complexity. Eunice answered, moving to stand beside Ben. Show that seemingly chaotic systems can achieve harmony without simplification. By using the Aurora Omnitrix and Eunice's evolved capabilities to establish bridges between timelines, Azimuth elaborated. Creating sustainable connections rather than eliminations. Which means we need to visit these vulnerable timelines, Ben concluded, understanding dawning. Physically go to the points where they're being assessed and, what? Prove they deserve to exist. In essence, Azimuth confirmed. Though the specific methodology will depend on each timeline's unique attributes. Kai crossed her arms, expression skeptical but determined. And Elena, if she's targeting the same nexus points with her own agenda, then we'll have to stop her too. Ben stated simply, without harming her, if possible. Whatever she's become, she believes she's fighting for survival. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed gently against his wrist, as if acknowledging his resolution. Ben felt Eunice's presence beside him, steady, supportive, connected on a level beyond mere proximity. I'll need to calibrate the resonator to work with the Aurora Omnitrix, Azimuth stated. Already moving to his equipment. It should be able to identify the most critical intervention points and provide temporal coordinates. How long will that take? Ben asked, aware that time, however relative in their current situation, was still a factor. Several hours, at minimum, the Galvan replied. The mathematics involved are considerable. Kai moved Taua, rode the laboratory's communication systems. I should contact my research team, warn them about the temporal distortions in Elena's activities. As the others engaged in their preparations, Ben found himself standing before a window overlooking Galvan Prime's chaotic landscape. The temporal distortions had intensified, reality rippling like fabric in a cosmic wind. Eunice joined him silently, her presence a comfort amidst the unfolding crisis. When I first found the Omnitrix, Ben said quietly, I thought it was just about turning into aliens. Having powers. Being a hero. He watched a bewildering phase between multiple architectural configurations in the distance. I never imagined it would lead to this, standing at a cosmic crossroads, trying to save reality itself. Would you change it if you could? Eunice asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Choose a simpler path. Ben considered the question seriously, feeling the Aurora Omnitrix warm against his skin, not activating, just responding to his contemplation. No, he answered finally. With all the challenges, all the responsibility, I wouldn't change it. He turned to face her. Especially now. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding deeper than words, connection beyond conventional relationship. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed once, softly, in perfect harmony with Eunice's evolved systems. Interesting. Azimuth's voice interrupted from behind them. They turned to find the Galvan watching them with analytical interest. The quantum resonance between you has strengthened significantly. Far faster than predicted. Is that important? Ben asked, though again his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Critical, Azimuth confirmed. Your connection, this synchronization, it's the foundation of our strategy against the judgment. His ancient eyes held something rarely seen, hope. The celestial sapiens value perfect symmetry above all else. Your harmonized complexity may be the only argument they'll understand. Kai approached, having completed her communications. Azimuth, the temporal stabilizers are detecting a new pattern in the distortions. They're becoming more structured. The Galvan frowned, moving to examine the readings. The preliminary phase is concluding. The formal judgment will begin soon. How soon? Ben asked. Azimuth looked up, expression grave. Time is relative when dealing with celestial sapiens. But in terms you would understand, days at most. Perhaps hours. Ben nodded, decision already made. Then we work faster. Eunice and I will help with the calibrations. Kai, we'll need everything you know about the artifacts and the nexus points. They moved with renewed purpose, gathering around the central console as Azimuth began the complex calculation. Necessary to map their intervention points. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed steadily against Ben's wrist, not with warning now, but with readiness. Outside, the fractured sky of Galvan Prime continued its chaotic display. Reality itself hanging in the balance as the celestial sapien judgment approached. But within the laboratory, something new had crystallized: determination, connection, and the nascent strategy that might yet save the multiverse from cosmic simplification. For Ben Tennyson, wielder of the Aurora Omnitrix, it was just another impossible challenge, and he had never been one to back down from those. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Temporal Dissonance. The calibration of the multiform resonator proceeded with methodical precision in Azimuth's laboratory, crystalline components humming as they aligned with the Aurora Omnitrix's quantum signature. Ben sat perfectly still, arm extended as gossamer filaments of energy connected the ancient artifact to the device on his wrist. Each pulse sent cascades of data flowing through the connection, mapping the most vulnerable nexus points in the multiverse. Eunice monitored the process from a secondary console, her evolved systems interpreting the complex dimensional mathematics that even Azimuth's equipment struggled to process. Her fingers danced across holographic controls, eyes reflecting the shifting patterns of timeline projections. Convergence at 73%, she reported, voice calm despite the gravity of their work. The resonator is identifying primary intervention coordinates. Azimuth nodded without looking up from his calculations. The precision exceeds my expectations. Your evolved processing capabilities are impressive. From Azimuth, such acknowledgement bordered on effusive praise. Eunice smiled lightly but maintained her focus on the calibration process. Kai paced the laboratory's perimeter, reviewing xenoarchaeological data on her tablet. According to these readings, the temporal distortions are following a specific pattern, radiating outward from central nexus points like ripples in spacetime. The celestial sapiens are methodical, Azimuth confirmed. They begin with what they consider redundant variations, timelines so similar to others that their erasure causes minimal disruption to the overall multiverse. The casual description of timeline erasure sent a chill through Ben. How many have they already purified? Azimuth's expression grew guarded. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. Most so minor that their absence would be undetectable to conventional perception. Each containing billions of living beings. Ben noted quietly, the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed suddenly, its interface flaring with unexpected energy. Ben gasped as information flooded his consciousness, not just data but experiences, fragments of other timelines bleeding through the connection. Ben. Eunice moved to his side immediately, concern evident in her voice. He blinked rapidly, trying to process the disorienting input. I'm seeing other versions, other possibilities. His free hand grasped Eunice's instinctively, seeking an anchor in the flood of timeline fragments. Eunice didn't hesitate, establishing a direct connection to help stabilize the overwhelming input. Through their joined hands, she could sense what Ben was experiencing glimpses of alternate realities where different choices had led to divergent outcomes. It's the resonator, Azimuth explained, adjusting controls to moderate the energy flow. As it identifies vulnerable timelines, it's creating temporary connections to them through the Aurora Omnitrix. Ben's breathing steadied as Eunice helped filter the chaotic information, their synchronized systems working in harmony to process what would overwhelm either individually. The visions became more coherent, less a flood and more a structured flow of alternate possibilities. I can see, he began, eyes unfocused as he looked beyond conventional reality. A timeline where I never found the Omnitrix. Another where I kept Alien X's powers permanently. Hundreds where different choices led to. He paused, expression troubled. Different relationships, different paths. The calibration reached completion with a gentle chime, the resonator's crystalline structure settling into a stable configuration. The connection to Ben's Aurora Omnitrix dimmed but didn't completely fade, maintaining a subtle link that pulsed with cosmic awareness. Calibration complete, Azimuth announced. The resonator has identified the most critical intervention points, nexus coordinates where your presence could influence the judgment process. The laboratory's central holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of reality nexus points, intersections where multiple timelines converged and where the celestial sapien judgment would be implemented. 7 primary coordinates, Kai observed, studying the display, each representing a different aspect of reality under assessment. Correct, Azimuth confirmed. The celestial sapiens evaluate existence through distinct categorical lenses: evolutionary potential, technological development, cultural diversity, and so forth. Ben stood, the lingering effects of timeline exposure fading as Eunice maintained their stabilizing connection. Which point is most vulnerable? Where do we start? Azimuth manipulated the display, zooming in on a specific nexus that pulsed with urgent energy. This coordinates correspond to a physical location that should be familiar to you. Tennyson. The planet Koros, Tetraman homeworld, Ben recognized immediately. Home of 4-armed species. And specifically, Azimuth continued, the seat of the IR political power, the grand proving grounds where their leadership contests are held. Kai approached the display, professional interest overriding her previous tension around Ben. Tetraman culture. E is experiencing significant social evolution. Traditional warrior structures meeting progressive reform movements. A perfect representation of evolutionary potential in hierarchical species. Precisely why the celestial sapiens have identified it as a nexus point, Azimuth agreed. The Tetraman cultural evolution represents exactly the type of complex, unpredictable development they find inefficient. Ben studied the coordinates, noting how the timeline threads around Koros vibrated with particular intensity. So we go there, demonstrate the value in their cultural complexity, and, what? The celestial sapiens change their minds about purification. One nexus at a time, Tennyson, Azimuth replied with characteristic pragmatism. The judgment isn't a single decision but a cascading series of evaluations. Each intervention creates potential for broader reconsideration. We need to leave immediately, Eunice stated, reviewing temporal distortion data. The judgment process is accelerating. Koros is already experiencing significant timeline fluctuations. Kai gathered specialized equipment from Azimuth's supplies. I'm coming with you. My xenoanthropological expertise will be valuable in navigating Tetraman political structures. Ben raised an eyebrow but didn't object. Despite their complicated history, Kai's professional skills were undeniable. The transport system remains compromised, Azimuth noted. You'll need to create your own method of travel, as you did to reach Galvan Prime. Ben nodded, turning to Eunice. Their silent communication had grown more efficient with each interaction, understanding flowing between them without words. She moved to his side as he activated the Aurora Omnitrix. We'll establish a temporal corridor directly to Koros, he explained to Kai. It might be disorienting. Kai shouldered her equipment pack with professional composure. I've studied theoretical models of nonlinear transportation. I'm prepared. Theory and experience are rather different, Eunice noted with gentle amusement. Azimuth interrupted with uncharacteristic urgency. One crucial warning before you depart. The nexus coordinates represent POI. NTS where reality itself is more malleable. Your actions there, especially with the Aurora Omnitrix, will have magnified consequences. Meaning, Ben prompted. Meaning, the Galvan creator emphasized. That the timeline variations you've begun experiencing will intensify. The boundaries between what is, what was, and what could be will thin considerably. The timeline glimpses, Ben realized, recalling the disorienting visions he'd experienced during calibration. Azimuth nodded gravely. They will become more frequent, more vivid. Without proper stabilization, they could overwhelm your consciousness entirely. All eyes turned to Eunice, whose evolved systems had already demonstrated the ability to help Ben process these experiences. I can help maintain stability, she confirmed. Oh, our connection allows me to filter and contextualize the timeline inputs. Azimuth studied them both with ancient eyes that seemed to see beyond the moment. The synchronization between you will be crucial, not just for your mission on Koros, but for what follows. He turned to his console, activating a sequence that transferred data to both the Aurora Omnitrix and Eunice's systems. These are advanced stabilization protocols. They should help manage the quantum entanglement between you. Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix warm against his wrist as it integrated the new protocols. Beside him, Eunice closed her eyes briefly, her evolved systems absorbing the complex quantum mathematics. Thank you, she said simply when her eyes reopened. Don't thank me yet, Azimuth replied cryptically. The P-ATH before you contains variables even I cannot fully calculate. His gaze shifted to Kai. Watch them carefully. Your outsider perspective may prove valuable if their connection becomes too synchronized. Kai frowned slightly but nodded, recognizing the seriousness in Azimuth's tone. With preparations complete, Ben activated the Aurora Omnitrix, its interface responding with fluid precision. He selected the necessary traits for their journey: Chronosapian temporal manipulation, Celestial Sapian reality navigation, and Necrophrygian phase shifting. The transformation flowed over him, no longer disorienting but familiar, a synthesis of capabilities that maintained his core identity while integrating alien traits. His skin took on a midnight blue sheen with constellation-like patterns, Chronosapian mechanisms manifesting within his chest cavity, visible beneath the semi-transparent surface of his altered form. Eunice established their connection, her evolved systems adapting complementary traits, not mirroring Ben's transformation but developing harmonized capabilities that enhanced their combined potential. Where his form incorporated mechanical precision, hers manifested biological adaptation, creating perfect counterbalance. Ready? Ben asked, extending his hands to both women. Eunice took his right hand without hesitation, their connection strengthening immediately. I paused briefly before accepting his left, her expression professional but with underlying complexity that spoke to their shared history. Ben concentrated, channeling the synthesized abilities to eat a temporal corridor, not teleportation but a controlled bubble of reality that could navigate between the fractured spaces of the judgment-affected multiverse. The air around them rippled, folding like origami as the corridor formed. Through their connected hands, Eunice helped stabilize the quantum mathematics, while Ben's synthesized abilities provided the raw power necessary to maintain the corridor's integrity. Koros nexus coordinates locked, he confirmed, voice resonating with harmonized energy. Temporal corridor established. With a final pulse from the Aurora Omnitrix, they stepped forward into the swirling vortex of space-time, leaving Galvan Prime behind as they embarked toward the first intervention point in their mission to influence the Celestial Sapian judgment. The journey through the temporal corridor was unlike conventional space travel, a kaleidoscopic passage through layers of reality where time and distance became relative concepts rather than fixed measurements. For Ben, whose consciousness was enhanced by both the Aurora Omnitrix and his connection to Eunice, the experience was manageable if disorienting. For Kai, despite her theoretical preparation, it proved more challenging. Focus on me, Ben instructed as he felt her grip tighten with distress. My form is temporally anchored. Use it as your reference point. Kai nodded, forcing her scientific mind to concentrate on the stable elements within the chaotic passage. Her breathing steadied as she found rhythm in the journey, adaptation that spoke to her remarkable resilience. Eunice, meanwhile, had integrated fully with the experience, her evolved systems processing the temporal mathematics with elegant precision. Through their connection, she helped Ben navigate the increasingly turbulent corridors of space-time. "The distortions are worse than anticipated," she observed, voice somehow clear despite the reality flux surrounding them. "The judgment process has accelerated significantly." Ben nodded, feeling the strain of maintaining their protective bubble as they approached Koros. The temporal corridor shuddered as they passed through regions of space-time already experiencing preliminary purification, areas where reality had thinned to gossamer fragility. "Hold on," he warned as they approached their destination. Transition in 3, 2, 1. The corridor collapsed around them, reality reforming as they materialized on a stone balcony overlooking a vast landscape of red-orange desert. The thin atmosphere of Koros greeted them with swirling dust devils dancing across rocky plains. Twin suns blazing overhead in a copper-hued sky. Ben's transformation receded as the Aurora Omnitrix powered down, returning him to human form. Beside him, Eunice similarly reverted to baseline, while Kai staggered slightly, disoriented from the transition. "That was," she began, steadying herself against a stone pillar. "More intense than any research could have prepared me for. Interdimensional travel through judgment-affected space-time isn't covered in many textbooks," Ben replied with a hint of his old humor, though his eyes remained serious as he surveyed their surroundings. They had arrived at what appeared to be an ancient observation platform carved into a mountain face, overlooking the sprawling Tetraman capital. Below, massive stone and metal structures rose from the desert floor, architectural designs that emphasized strength and permanence, buildings made to withstand both the harsh environment and the powerful beings who inhabited it. But something was wrong with the scene. The city appeared to be fluctuating, certain districts phasing between multiple architectural configurations as temporal distortions rippled across the landscape. "The judgment effects have already reached Koros," Eunice noted, her enhanced perception detecting patterns in the distortions. "They're evaluating different potential development paths for Tetraman civilization." Kai activated a scanner from her equipment pack, analyzing the fluctuations. "Fascinating. The variations seem to center around their governmental structures, different possible evolutions of their leadership model." Ben felt the Aurora Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, responding to the Nexus energy concentrated in this location. With the pulse came another momentary flash of timeline awareness, glimpses of Koros under different leadership, different social structures, different evolutionary paths. "The Celestial Sapiens are testing which version of Tetraman society they prefer," he realized aloud. "Which to preserve and which to purify." "Precisely," a new voice confirmed from behind them. "And their preference for static hierarchies over dynamic systems puts my people at particular risk." They turned to find a Tetraman female regarding them from the platform's entrance. Tall and imposingly muscular even by her species standards, she wore armor that combined traditional Tetraman design with innovative materials and technology, a visual representation of blended approaches. 3 of her 4 arms bore ceremonial bracers marked with leadership symbols, while the 4th held an advanced energy weapon with casual familiarity. Luma Red Wind, Ben recognized, genuinely surprised despite knowing the resonator had guided them to this specific nexus. "Benjamin Tennyson," she acknowledged, her voice carrying the natural resonance of her species but modulated with diplomatic precision. "Your arrival was predicted, though the method was unexpected." Her eyes shifted to Ben's companions, assessing them with tactical efficiency. "The evolved Omnitrix and the xenoarchaeologist. The pattern completes itself." Kai stepped forward, professional curiosity overriding caution. "You were expecting us." "How?" Luma gestured toward the fluctuating city below. "When reality itself becomes unstable, one learns to recognize patterns in the chaos. Your arrival at this precise juncture was statistically probable." Her 4 eyes fixed on the Aurora Omnitrix. "Especially given recent developments in certain technologies." "You know about the Aurora Omnitrix?" Ben stated rather than asked, sensing her awareness went beyond simple recognition. "I know it represents a convergence point in multiple potential timelines," Luma confirmed, moving the balcony's edge with regal confidence. "Just as I know the Celestial Sapiens have begun their judgment, their evaluation of which versions of reality they deem worthy of continuation." Her largest right hand gestured toward the city below, where a massive arena dominated the central district, the Grand Proving Grounds, traditional site of Tetraman leadership contests. Unlike the surrounding structures, it remained stable, anchored somehow against the temporal fluctuations. In 3 cycles of our sons, I will challenge my father for leadership of our people, Luma continued. A contest hat represents more than personal ambition, it embodies the struggle between traditional warrior hierarchies and progressive reformation. The nexus point, Eunice realized. Your challenge represents a critical juncture in Tetraman cultural evolution. Luma nodded, approval flashing across her 4-eyed face. Your evolved intelligence serves you well, Omnitrix. Indeed, my challenge exists at the center of timeline divergence, where Tetraman society either calcifies in tradition or evolves toward more adaptive models. Ben studied her closely, noting the changes since their last encounter years earlier. Gone was the impulsive warrior princess who had once claimed him as her fiancé through Tetraman custom. This Luma carried herself with the gravitas of a leader who had grown beyond cultural limitations while still honoring their core values. You need our help, he concluded, recognizing the purpose behind her unsurprised welcome. I require alliance, Luma corrected firmly. There is a difference, Tennyson. I offer partnership of mutual benefit, not supplication. Despite the gravity of their situation, Ben found himself smiling slightly. Some aspects of Tetraman Direct Ness remained consistent across all possible timeline variations. What exactly does this alliance entail? Kai asked, her xenoanthropological training evident in her careful phrasing. Luma turned from the balcony, gesturing for them to follow. Come, this location is too exposed to temporal fluctuations for detailed discussion. My compound is shielded against the worst effects. They followed her through a series of carved passageways that wound deeper into the mountain. Tetraman architecture favored imposing scale, hallways and chambers built for beings 8 feet tall and proportionately broad. For the humans, the effect was simultaneously impressive and intimidating. As they walked, Ben noticed how the temporal distortions lessened the deeper they went, replaced by a subtle ion that suggested technological countermeasures. Luma led them with confident familiarity through security checkpoints where Tetraman guards saluted with practiced precision. Your father permits you this level of independent operation? Ben asked, recalling the rigid hierarchical structures that had defined Tetraman society in his previous encounters. Luma's laugh held genuine amusement tinged with irony. Permits. No. Tolerates, perhaps, as the political reality has shifted beneath his feet. She glanced back at Ben. Much has changed since our arrangement was dissolved. My expiry, NCES beyond Koro's opened perspectives that transformed my approach to leadership. The hallway opened into a vast chamber that served as Luma's command center. Unlike traditional Tetraman war rooms with their emphasis on physical weaponry and battle maps, this space integrated advanced technology with traditional design elements. Holographic displays showed real-time data of temporal distortions across the planet, while Tetraman warriors worked alongside technical specialists from various species. My coalition, Luma explained, noting their surprise at the diverse team. Representatives from worlds that share our interest in maintaining timeline diversity against celestial sapien simplification. A smaller Tetraman female approached, offering a formal salute to Luma before addressing the visitors. The temporal stabilization field is holding at 86% capacity. We've managed to shield the Grand Proving Grounds and adjacent governmental districts, but outlying regions continue experiencing significant fluctuations. Thank you, Brant, Luma acknowledged. Maintain monitoring protocols and advise me of any degradation. As the officer returned to her duties, Luma guided her visitors to a more private strategic chamber adjacent to the main room. When the doors sealed behind them, she activated additional security measures before turning to face them directly. Now, she stated with characteristic Tetraman forthrightness, we may speak openly. Ben stepped forward, matching her directness. The multiform resonator guided us to Koros because this Thus point is critical to demonstrating the value of evolutionary complexity to the celestial sapiens. Your leadership challenge represents a perfect example of cultural adaptation. Luma's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a Tetraman expression of impressed surprise. Your understanding has evolved considerably, Tennyson. Yes, my challenge represents exactly that pivotal moment. She moved to a holographic display, activating a 3-dimensional representation of timeline variations specific to Koros. The Celestial Sapiens see our cultural evolution as unnecessarily complex, she continued. In their assessment, Tetraman society functions most efficiently when maintaining strict warrior hierarchies with minimal deviation. Because predictable patterns require less cosmic oversight, Eunice concluded, studying the timeline projections with her evolved intelligence. Precisely, Luma confirmed. Yet it is exactly our capacity for adaptation, for integrating new ideas while maintaining core cultural identity, that has allowed Tetramans to survive and thrive across cosmic ages. Kai approached the holographic display, professional fascination evident. Your coalition is deliberate, tele-modeling an alternative to traditional Tetraman leadership while still working within established cultural frameworks. Evolutionary adaptation rather than revolutionary disruption. Luma's expression registered approval. Your analytical skills justify your reputation. Drive. Green. Indeed, my approach challenges not just who leads but how leadership functions. Her four hands gestured to encompass the timeline projections. The Celestial Sapiens prefer my father's model: singular authority, predictable responses, resistance to change. If their judgment preserves only that variation, LL potential for Tetraman cultural evolution would be eliminated. Ben finished, understanding the stakes with crystal clarity. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed suddenly against his wrist, responding to T. He Nexus energies concentrated in this location. The pulse triggered another timeline flash, more intense than previous ones, immersing Ben's consciousness in multiple potential outcomes simultaneously. He saw Luma victorious in her challenge, implementing reforms that transformed Tetraman society into a galactic diplomatic force. Luma defeated, her progressive movement crushed under traditional authority. Koros destroyed by civil war as competing factions fractured without middle ground leadership. Tetraman culture calcified into unchanging patterns across centuries. Ben. Eunice's voice reached him through the overwhelming cascade of possibilities, her hand grasping his to establish their stabilizing connection. Through their link, she helped filter and organize the chaotic input, restoring balance to his perception. As the timeline flash subsided, Ben found himself supported between Eunice and Kai, who had moved to steady him when the episode began. Timeline exposure, Eunice explained to Luma, who watched with analytical concern. The Aurora Omnitrix allows Ben to perceive potential variations, but the experience can be overwhelming near nexus points. Luma nodded with surprisingly nuanced understanding. The temporal instabilities affect certain consciousness patterns more acutely. Several of my coalition's sensitives experience similar phenomena. Ben straightened, regaining his composure with Eunice's continued support. I saw potential outcomes of your challenge, multiple variations. And which did the Celestial Sapiens favor? Luma asked directly, practical even in metaphysical matters. The ones where Tetraman society remained static, Ben confirmed grimly. Where your challenge either failed or succeeded only to be corrupted back into traditional patterns. Luma absorbed this with stoic determination. Then our alliance becomes more crucial. My challenge must not only succeed but demonstrate the superior adaptability of evolutionary systems over static hierarchies. How exactly does this alliance benefit both parties? Kai asked, maintaining professional objectivity despite the escalating stakes. What specifically do you need from us? And what do you offer in return? Luma smiled. A rare expression on Tetraman features traditionally schooled to warrior stoicism. Direct and efficient. I appreciate that approach. Drive. Green. She activated another holographic display, this one showing the structure of the upcoming challenge ceremony. What I need is threefold. First, technological countermeasures against temporal manipulation. The Celestial Sapiens have already attempted to influence the challenge outcomes through subtle reality adjustments. The Aurora Omnitrix can establish a stability field around critical locations, Eunice suggested. Glancing at Ben for confirmation, he nodded, similar to what we created during transit, but more focused and sustained. Second, Luma continued, I require diplomatic representation from Earth. Your planet represents one of the most diverse evolutionary experiment zones in the galaxy, precisely the type of complex system the Celestial Sapiens find inefficient. Your presence as Earth's representative adds legitimacy to the progressive coalition I've established. Kai raised an eyebrow. You've positioned your challenge as more than a Tetraman leadership contest. You're framing it as a galactic philosophical statement. Politics requires strategic framing, Luma acknowledged without apology. The traditional faction cannot object to honoring our culture. Our traditions while simultaneously being outmaneuvered on the diplomatic front. And the third requirement, Ben prompted, impressed despite himself by Luma's political acumen. Direct demonstration of evolutionary synthesis. She answered, gesturing toward the Aurora Omnitrix. Your device represents exactly what my platform advocates, integration of diverse elements into harmonized systems. Maintain core identity while adapting to new challenges. The request carried significant implications. Using the Aurora Omnitrix as a political symbol involved risks beyond the merely tactical. The device isn't a prop. Ben noted carefully. Its capabilities extend beyond demonstration. I'm not suggesting mere spectacle, Tennyson, Luma responded, four eyes narrowing slightly. I understand precisely what the Aurora Omnitrix represents in the larger context of the Celestial Sapien judgment. What I propose is alignment of purposes, your mission to demonstrate evolutionary value coincide with my challenge to reshape Tetraman leadership. Eunice, who had been quietly processing the complex political and metaphysical layers of the discussion, spoke up. The Nexus coordinates led U.S. here specifically because this juncture represents a perfect demonstration opportunity. The resonator identified Luma's challenge as a critical intervention point. Ben nodded slowly, feeling the Aurora Omnitrix pulse in subtle confirmation. What do you offer in this alliance, Luma? Beyond the opportunity to influence the Nexus point. 3 things corresponding to your needs, she replied with precise parallelism. First, temporal sanctuary. My coalition has developed shielding technology that can protect against the worst effects of reality fluctuation, allowing you safe haven during the accelerating judgment process. She gestured to a holographic display showing a network of shielded locations across multiple worlds. Second, intelligence networks. My coalition spans 17 systems, with information gathering capabilities that track both Celestial Sapien assessment patterns and potential interference from others seeking to exploit the judgment. Like Elena Validus, Kai suggested. Luma's expression registered recognition. The nanite integrated human. Yes, our sensors detected her quantum signature accessing restricted temporal coordinates approximately 48 standard hours ago. This confirmation of Elena's continued activities sent a ripple of concern through the group. Ben exchanged glances with Eunice, whose worried expression mirrored his own thoughts. And third, he prompted, returning focus to Luma's proposed alliance. Military support, she stated simply. When the final phase of judgment begins, and you will require more than philosophical arguments to influence the outcome. My coalition commands significant defensive capabilities that could prove decisive at critical junctures. The offer was comprehensive and strategically sound. Ben considered it carefully, weighing potential complications against obvious benefits. The Aurora Omnitrix remained neutral against his skin, neither warning nor encouraging. This decision would be his alone. We need to discuss this privately, he said finally. Luma nodded without offense. Of course, strategic alliances require proper consideration. She activated a door to an adjacent chamber. This room is shielded against both surveillance and temporal fluctuation. Take whatever time you require. When the door closed behind them, Ben turned to his companions. Thoughts? Her offer is logical from multiple perspectives, Eunice observed, her evolved intelligence evaluating the complex proposal with remarkable efficiency. The alignment of our mission with her challenge creates mutual reinforcement of objectives. Kai's expression remained more cautious. Tetraman politics are notoriously lethal. Involving ourselves directly in a leadership challenge could have unpredictable consequences. She paused, scientific objectivity balancing her caution. That said, her coalition represents exactly the type of adaptive cultural evolution the Celestial Sapiens would eliminate through purification. As an intervention point, it's nearly perfect. Ben moved to a viewport that overlooked the Tetraman capital, where temporal distortions continued rippling across the landscape. Buildings phased between architectural configurations, streets rearranged themselves according to different urban development patterns, even the surrounding mountains shifted subtly as geology. Cal timeline variations manifested visually. The judgment is accelerating, he noted quietly. We don't have the luxury of perfect options. Eunice joined him at the viewport, her presence provident. G. Subtle stability through their connection. Luma has evolved considerably since your last encounter. Her approach to leadership represents genuine innovation within Tetraman cultural frameworks. She's integrated progressive ideals with traditional values, Kai agreed, professional assessment overriding personal reservations. Creating a hybrid model that could stabilize Tetraman society while allowing continued evolution. Ben nodded, decision crystallizing. Exactly the kind of synthesis we need to demonstrate to the Celestial Sapiens. He turned from the viewport. We accept the alliance, but with conditions. We support her challenge, but maintain independent operation regarding the Aurora Omnitrix. Agreement reached, they returned to the main chamber where Luma awaited with C. Her characteristic Tetraman patience, still as a statue but radiating coiled energy. We accept your proposed alliance, Ben stated directly, matching her cultural preference for forthright communication. With the condition that while we'll support your challenge and provide stabilization against temporal manipulation, the Aurora Omnitrix remains under my exclusive control. Luma's expression registered approval. Acceptable terms. I would expect nothing less from a worthy ally. She extended her upper right arm, the traditional Tetraman gesture for sealing important agreements. Ben clasped her massive forearm with his human hand, the contrast in size emphasizing the cross-species nature of their alliance. When exactly is this challenge ceremony? 3 solar rotations from now, Luma answered, releasing his arm. Though time has become somewhat flexible given the current circumstances, we'll need to establish temporal stabilization fields immediately, Eunice suggested. Beginning with the grand proving grounds where the challenge will be held. Luma nodded in agreement. My technical advisors can coordinate with you on implementation. The arena already has preliminary shielding. But your methods may prove more effective against Celestial Sapien influence specifically. As they began discussing tactical details, a Tetraman officer burst into the chamber, protocol abandoned in evident urgency. Commander, she saluted hastily. Temporal distortion spike in the southern quadrant. Lord Tetraman's forces are mobilizing toward your position. Luma's posture shifts. Ted instantly from diplomatic to battle ready, all 4 arms moving to weapon positions with practiced efficiency. Estimated arrival, 20 units, standard measurement, the officer reported. I have deployed temporal accelerators to bypass the distortion zones. Ben exchanged glances with his companions. Your father knows we've arrived. The temporal fluctuations would have registered on his monitoring systems. Luma confirmed grimly, and my challenge is not scheduled for 3 more days. His move is, predictably preemptive. Kai activated her equipment, scanning the approaching threat. Multiple squads, heavy weapons configuration. They're not coming for diplomatic discussion. My father sees my challenge as dishonorable specifically because of integrated off-world methodologies and allies, Luma explained. Moving to a weapons rack and selecting advanced armor components. Your arrival represents confirmation of his worst accusations. Then we need to change the narrative, Ben decided. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsing as his resolve crystallized. Turn confrontation into opportunity. Eunice caught his intention through their deepening connection. A demonstration of synthesis rather than conflict. Show that different approaches can harmonize rather than compete. Precisely. Ben turned to Luma. Instead of defending against your father's forces, we meet them openly, but not as enemies. As examples of what your leadership model represents. Luma paused in her armor preparations, 4 eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Tactically unexpected. Strategically audacious. A slow smile spread across her face, an expression rarely seen on Tetraman warriors. My father anticipates either retreat or direct confrontation. Offering neither would force re-evaluation. We can establish a temporal stabilization field at the meeting point, Eunice suggested. Creating neutral ground where reality itself isn't fluctuating. A demonstration of what your coalition offers Koros. The plan formed rapidly, tactical details flowing between them with remarkable synchronicity. Within minutes, they had moved to the compound's upper levels, a small contingent of Loom A's coalition forces accompanying them as they prepared to meet Lord Tetraman's approaching army. Ben activated the Aurora Omnitrix, interface responding with fluid precision as he selected traits appropriate for their strategy: Chronosapien temporal stabilization, Petrosapien crystalline construction, and Galvan technological integration. The transformation flowed over him with practiced ease. his form remaining humanoid but incorporating crystalline structures that radiated temporal energy, skin taking on an iridescent quality that refracted light across multiple probability spectra. Eunice established their connection, her evolved systems adapting complementary traits that enhanced their combined capabilities. Together, they began generating a temporal stabilization field, a bubble of normalized space-time that pushed back against the reality fluctuations affecting the surrounding region. As the field expanded outward from their position, the landscape visibly stabilized. Build-in. GS ceased phasing between configurations, settling into their primary timeline manifestations. The very air seemed to clear, dust particles no longer shifting between potential positions but following normal physical laws. Remarkable, Kai commented, scientific appreciation evident as she monitored the effect with her equipment. You're not just creating stability, you're harmonizing conflicting timeline variations into a sustainable synthesis. Ben nodded, focusing on maintaining the field as they moved toward the designated meeting point, a natural plateau overlooking both Luma's compound and the approaching forces. Through his synthesized chronosapian senses, he could perceive the timeline distortions rippling against their stabilization field, testing its boundaries like waves against a shoreline. Lord Tetraman approaches, Luma announced, her enhanced vision detecting the dust clouds of rapid transport vehicles crossing the desert floor. With significant military presence, hold position, Ben instructed, channeling more energy into the stabilization field. Let them come to us. The contrast between chaotic distortion and our stable zone will make its own statement. They formed a small but deliberately composed group atop the plateau, Ben and Eunice at the center maintaining the stabilization field, Luma and her key coalition representatives forming a diplomatic rather than military configuration. And Kai positioned as Earth's scientific representative. The approaching forces became visible to unenhanced eyes, massive Tetraman war vehicles designed for both desert terrain and battle conditions. Surrounded by armored warriors on smaller individual transports. At their center rode a colossal figure even by Tetraman standards, Lord Tetraman himself, ruler of Koros, an embodiment of traditional warrior leadership. As the Tetraman forces reached the boundary of the stabilization field, a visible phenomenon occurred. The reality distortions that had been rippling around their vehicles suddenly ceased, the very air clarifying as they entered normalized space-time. The effect was immediate and undeniable, a demonstration more powerful than any verbal argument. Lord Tetraman raised a massive hand, halting his forces just within the stabilization boundary. His four eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation, tactical mind recalculating based on unexpected conditions. Luma Red Wind, his voice boomed across the plateau, deep even by Tetraman standards. You compound dishonor upon dishonor. First challenging leadership before traditional timing, then consorting with off-worlders. And now, he gestured to the stabilized zone around them, employing alien technologies against natural conditions. Ben recognized the traditional rhetoric of Tetraman leadership, framing innovation as dishonor, outside influence as contamination. Yet beneath the ritual language, he detected genuine concern, not just for authority challenged but for cultural identity threatened by change. Luma stepped forward, her posture respectful but not submissive. Father, I offer neither dishonor nor contamination, but adaptation in service of our people's continued strength. She gestured to the visible boundary where reality stabilization met chaotic fluctuation. What you call natural conditions are external manipulations of our very reality, judgments imposed by beings who would simplify our existence to suit their cosmic aesthetics. Her words struck with precision, naming the true threat while positioning her approach as defensive rather than revolutionary. Ben noted the subtle shift among Lord Tetraman's officers, expressions of confusion giving way to thoughtful reassessment. The off-worlders you condemn, Luma continued, bring method to preserve our right to self-determination, to protect Tetraman cultural evolution against cosmic erasure. Lord Tetraman descended from his vehicle, massive form towering over the assembled group as he approached with measured steps. His focus shifted from his daughter to Ben, recognizing the source of the stabilization field. Tennyson, he acknowledged, voice marginally less hostile. Your reputation precedes you, even to Koros, though I question your involvement in Tetraman internal matters. With respect, Lord Tetraman, Ben replied, maintaining the stabilization field while engaging diplomatically. What affects Koros now extends far beyond internal matters. The reality fluctuations you've witnessed across your world aren't natural phenomena but symptoms of a cosmic-level threat. The massive Tetraman leader studied Ben with ancient warriors' wisdom that belied his traditionalist reputation. The changing patterns, the shifting landscapes. My advisors claimed atmospheric anomalies, yet he glanced toward the visible boundary where chaotic distortion met stabilized space-time. No natural phenomenon behaves thus. Celestial Sapien judgment, Ben confirmed, us. Ing the direct communication Tetramans valued. They're evaluating all possible variations of reality, preparing to eliminate those they deem inefficient. Lord Tetraman's expression darkened with genuine concern. Even traditional warrior cultures recognized existential threats when presented with clear evidence. And their criteria for this judgment? He inquired, tactical mind immediately seeking parameters of the threat. Kai stepped forward, her scientific authority adding weight to the explanation. Simplification over complexity, static patterns over dynamic adaptation, predictability over innovation. She gestured to the Tetraman capital visible in the distance. Their preferred version of Koros maintains rigid hierarchies and traditional forms, unchanging across cosmic time. While such stability has virtues, Eunice added, her evolved perspective offering balanced assessment, it eliminates the adaptability that has made Tetraman culture resilient through ages of galactic change. Lord Tetraman absorbed this information with the calculating patience of a seasoned military leader. His eyes returned to his daughter, reassessing her position in light of this new context. Your challenge, he stated, understanding dawning. It represents more than leadership transition. It demonstrates our cultural capacity for evolution while maintaining core values, Luma confirmed. Exactly the characteristic the Celestial Sapiens would eliminate from our timeline. A tense silence fell across the plateau as Lord Tetraman considered implications that extended far beyond traditional Tetraman politics. The stabilization field hummed softly, its boundary a visual reminder of the cosmic stakes underlying their discussion. Before Lord Tetraman could respond, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsed with sudden urgency against Ben's wrist. The pulse triggered another timeline flash, but unlike previous experiences, this one manifested visibly to all present. The Arabo. The plateau shimmered as reality thinned momentarily, displaying overlapping images of potential outcomes. The assembled Tetramans witnessed multiple variations of their world, some thriving with a devanced integration of tradition and innovation, others calcified into unchanging patterns, some devastated by conflicts between progressive and traditional factions. Most disturbing were the gaps between potential timelines, empty voids where entire variations had already been erased from existence, purified by Celestial Sapien judgment before they could fully manifest. The vision lasted only moments before the Aurora Omnitrix stabilized, Ben and Eunice's combined efforts restoring normal perception. But its impact on the assembled Tetramans was profound, visible shock registering even on faces trained to warrior stoicism. You all saw it, Ben confirmed, addressing the entire gathering. Those weren't illusions but glimpses of timeline variations under assessment. The gaps represent possibilities already purified from existence. Lord Tetraman's expression had transformed, traditional authority tempered by genuine concern for his people's future. These Celestial Sapiens, they erase entire potential versions of our world based on their preference for simplicity. Precisely, Ben confirmed, which is why your daughter's challenge represents more than leadership succession. It demonstrates the value in harmonizing tradition with adaptation, proving that complexity creates resilience rather than inefficiency. Lord Tetraman turned to Luma, reassessing her with new understanding. Your coalition, your methods, they were not merely political positioning against my leadership. Never merely that, Father, Luma responded with genuine respect. I challenge not to destroy Hat came before but to evolve what can be, preserving our core strengths while adapting to cosmic realities that threaten our very existence. Another moment of weighted silence passed as the imposing Tetraman leader processed implications that challenged foundations of his long rule. When he spoke again, his tone carried new depth. The challenge will proceed as tradition demands, he announced, voice carrying across the plateau. But modified to incorporate. He paused, selecting words with careful precision, appropriate adaptations for current circumstances. The declaration represented neither surrender nor simple acceptance, but something more nuanced, a leader's recognition that circumstances required evolution rather than mere preservation. The grand proving grounds will require comprehensive temporal stabilization, Lord Tetraman continued, tactical mind already addressing practical concerns. If these cosmic entities seek to influence our leadership determination, we can establish permanent stabilization fields around critical locations, Ben offered, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing in confirmation. Creating spaces where Tetraman decisions remain truly your own, free from external manipulation. Lord Tetraman nodded, turning to address his assembled officers. Return to the capital. Prepare the proving grounds according to traditional protocols, but incorporate the off-world stabilization technologies. His 4 eyes swept the gathered warriors. What we have witnessed today transcends faction. All Tetramans stand together against cosmic erasure. The proclamation reframed the situation perfectly, transforming potential civil conflict into unified resistance against external threat, while simultaneously validating Luma's progressive approach without directly conceding authority. As the Tetraman forces reorganized according to their leader's commands, Lord Tetraman approached Ben directly. His massive form towered over the human, but his manner carried respect rather than intimidation. Tennyson, he acknowledged, Koros remembers its allies. When this challenge concludes, regardless of outcome, the Tetraman people will stand with Ea. RTH against these celestial sapiens and their purification. The declaration carried significant weight. Tetraman military support represented formidable alliance in any cosmic conflict. Thank you, Lord Tetraman. Ben replied with matching respect. The challenge itself may influence the judgment more than either of us anticipates. As the Tetraman leader returned to his forces, Luma approached their group. Satisfaction evident beneath her warrior's composure. A more favorable outcome than even my most optimistic tactical projections, she admitted. My father rarely reconsiders established positions so fundamentally. The timeline vision provided irrefutable evidence, Kai observed, scientific mind analyzing the interaction. Seeing potential erasure of their world affected even the most traditional warriors. Ben nodded, the Aurora Omnitrix cooling against his wrist as its energy output stabilized. Sometimes the most effective argument isn't philosophical but experiential. They needed to see what's at stake. The temporary thinning of reality barriers was fortuitous, Eunice noted, her evolved systems having recorded the phenomenon for later analysis. Though potentially concerning in its intensity, the judgment process appears to be accelerating faster than Azimuth calculated. Their discussion was interrupted as the stabilization field boundaries suddenly rippled. Not collapsing but responding to external pressure as something approached from the zone of temporal distortion. Energy signature detected, Kai reported, checking her scanner. Mechanical but with biological components. Moving rapidly toward our position. Ben tensed, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing in response to potential threat. Elena, negative, Kai replied, studying the readings. Different configuration. Multiple units. Coordinated movement pattern. Luma signaled to her coalition forces, who formed defensive positions with practiced efficiency. Perimeter alert. Unknown approach. Vector through temporal distortion zone. The boundary rippled again as the unidentified objects passed through, materializing within their stabilized zone. Mechanical constructs similar to the drones they'd encountered on Galvan Prime, but with significant modifications, their structures incorporating organic components that pulsed with unsettling vitality. Psychobo's tech, Ben recognized immediately, but evolved somehow. These aren't simple drones. The machines surrounded them in circular formation, maintaining distance while establishing strategic positioning. Their behavior suggested intelligence beyond programmed responses, tactical assessment rather than simple attack protocols. Their scanning, Eunice noted, her evolved systems detecting the subtle energy emissions. Specifically focused on the Aurora Omnitrix and the stabilization field parameters. Before anyone could respond further, the drones projected a holographic image at their center, a figure Ben recognized. Despite further cybernetic modifications since their last encounter. Dr. Psychobos, he acknowledged, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing with warning energy. I thought we left you in containment on Galvan Prime. The cerebrocrustacean's image flickered with transmission distortion, his cybernetically enhanced form even more integrated with technology than before. Your PP presumption that physical containment affects distributed consciousness demonstrates continued limitations in your understanding, Tennyson. He's not physically present, Eunice explained, analyzing the transmission. This is a quantum entangled projection, his consciousness distributed across multiple drone units. How disappointing to be analyzed by the Omnitrix, Psychobos's image responded with characteristic disdain. Quote, though your EE evolution presents intriguing variables in the equation. Luma stepped forward, all four arms holding weapons trained on different drone units. State your purpose, cerebrocrustacean. You intrude on Tetraman sovereign territory during sensitive diplomatic proceedings. Psychobos's massive cranium pulsed with enhanced neural activity. Purpose, merely observation of APP particle. Polarly significant nexus point in the judgment process. Your little leadership drama has attracted quite specific celestial sapien attention. Ben's eyes narrowed with suspicion. You're working with the Chronosapiens against the Celestial Sapiens. Or with Elena against both. Which is it, Psychobos? The cybernetic cerebrocrustacean's laughter echoed with mechanical modulation. Such linear thinking. Such limited conceptualization of PP possibility. His holographic image gestured toward the Aurora Omnitrix. That device represents merely one approach to the judgment paradigm, preservation through harmonization. And you represent another, Kai challenged, scientific curiosity overriding caution. The nanite human pursues preservation through technological ascension, Psychobos acknowledged. An ambitious but fundamentally flawed methodology. His cybernetic components pulsed with increasing energy. I pursue something far more elegant, selective reconstruction. The implications sent a chill through Ben. You're not trying to influence the judgment. You're trying to exploit it. Use the purification process to remake reality according to your specifications. Exploit carries such negative connotations. Psychobos objected with mock offense. I merely recognize opportunity within cosmic reorganization. His holographic gaze fixed on Luma. The Tetraman Nexus Point. T provides fascinating data regarding celestial sapien evaluation criteria. Their preference for traditional hierarchies over adaptive systems confirms my mathematical models. Luma's expression hardened. My people are not variables in your equations, cerebrocrustacean. On the contrary, Psychobos corrected. All existence comprises variables in the ultimate equation, one the celestial sapien. N's attempt to simplify while I seek to optimize. As he spoke, the drones began emitting subtle energy fields that interacted with the temporal stabilization zone, creating ripple patterns where competing technologies interfaced. He's mapping the stabilization field, Eunice realized, sensing the technological intrusion through her evolved systems. Analyzing how the Aurora Omnitrix counteracts celestial sapien influence. Ben raised his wrist, the Aurora Omnitrix pulsing with responsive energy. Whatever you're planning, Psychobos, it stops now. Your drones can't withstand direct confrontation. The cerebrocrustacean's holographic image flickered with amusement. Confrontation. How disappointingly predictable. My drones aren't designed for combat, merely information acquisition. The units began withdrawing, maintaining their scanning activities while creating distance. Though I should note that your stabilization methodology has significant vulnerabilities, PP particularly regarding emotional resonance fluctuations. Quote, the cryptic warning triggered Ben's instinctive caution. What are you talking about? The Aurora Omnitrix responds to emotional states, Psychobos explained with condescending patience. Creating temporal emotional feedback loops that destabilize the very fields you attempt to establish. His cybernetic face approximated a smile. Quite the design flaw, one I would have eliminated in my superior version. Before Ben could respond, the drones simultaneously emitted concentrated energy pulses, not attacking the group directly but targeting the boundar. Why where stabilized zone met temporal distortion? The interaction created a cascading resonance effect, the stabilization field fluctuating as competing energies interfered with its quantum structure. He's destabilizing the field, Eunice warned, immediately reinforcing her connection to Ben, helping channel the Aurora Omnitrix's energy to compensate. The attack was more sophisticated than simple. Disruption. The energy pulses contained embedded harmonic patterns that interacted with the Aurora Omnitrix's emotional responsiveness, creating feedback loops that amplified rather than canceled the destabilization effect. Ben felt the device responding to his rising concern, its energy output fluctuating as it attempted to maintain the stabilization field while simultaneously reacting to his emotional state. The paradoxical demands created system strain that manifested as visible energy discharge around his wrist. The Aurora Omnitrix is overcompensating, he realized aloud, struggling to control its output. It's responding to perceived threat by increasing power, which creates more instability, which triggers more response. Eunice strengthened their connection, her evolved systems helping moderate the feedback loop. Focus on stability rather than counterattack, she guided. Emotional equilibrium rather than protective response. Ben nodded, consciously regulating his emotional state despite the natural inclination toward defensive reaction. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed in response, its energy patterns stabilizing as he achieved greater internal balance. Luma, meanwhile, had signaled her forces to surround Psychobos's drones, weapons targeting critical systems. Cease your interference immediately, cerebrocrustacean, or face destruction of your units. How very traditionally Tetraman, Psychobos's hologram commented with mock disappointment. Resorting to physical threats when intellectual responses fail. The drones began phasing out of normal space-time, their structures becoming increasingly transparent. But as mentioned, confrontation was never my objective. Data acquisition is complete. As the drones faded from conventional reality, Psychobos's holographic face lingered momentarily. Consider this, Tennyson, when the judgment concludes, what emerges will reflect the consciousness that most effectively influences the process. The celestial sapiens may hold the PP power, but those who understand their methodologies will shape the outcome. With those ominous words, the hologram dissolved completely, the drones vanishing back into the temporal distortion zone surrounding their stabilized area. Was that a threat or a recruitment pitch? Kai wondered aloud, scanning for residual energy signatures from the retreating drones. Both, Ben suggested, the Aurora Omnitrix cooling against his wrist as its energy output normalized. Psychobos sees himself as the intellectual superior to celestial sapiens despite their power. He's positioning to exploit whatever reality emerges from the judgment. Luma lowered her weapons, four eyes narrowing thoughtfully. His interference here was deliberate provocation, testing your capabilities rather than attempting true disruption. Agreed, Eunice confirmed, her evolved intelligence analyzing the encounter. He was mapping how the Aurora Omnitrix responds to different stimuli, particularly emotional triggers. The implications were concerning. Psychobos gathering tactical information about the very technology meant to influence the judgment process. Ben exchanged troubled glances with Eunice. Their connection transmitting shared concern without words. We should return to your compound, he suggested to Luma. Establish more comprehensive stabilization around the grand proving grounds and prepare for your challenge ceremony. The Tetraman leader nodded in agreement. Psychobos's interest confirms the strategic importance of our nexus point. The challenge must proceed with maximum security against external manipulation, whether from celestial sapiens, cerebrocrustaceans, or other interested parties. As they departed the plateau, Ben maintained the stabilization field arrow. Their group while processing the encounter's implications. Psychobos's involvement complicated an already complex situation, adding another faction with distinct objectives regarding the judgment outcome. The Aurora Omnitrix pulsed gently against his wrist, its energy patterns suggesting not warning but confirmation. This nexus point on Koros represented exactly the type of critical juncture the resonator had identified, a convergence where multiple interests intersected and where demonstration of evolutionary value might genuinely influence celestial sapien evaluation. As they traveled back toward Luma's compound, the twin suns of Koros began setting over the desert landscape, bathing everything in copper-orange light that transformed the temporal distortions into eerily beautiful prismatic effects. Reality itself seemed thinner in the fading daylight, boundaries between potential variations more visibly permeable. Ben felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper, not just for our Earth or even the specific nexus points they needed to influence, but for the very concept of complexity itself. The celestial sapiens' preference for simplification threatened not just individual melines but the fundamental nature of existence, the beautiful, messy, contradictory potential for life to evolve in unexpected directions. The Aurora Omnitrix warmed against his skin, resonating with this understanding, and with his growing resolution to defend that complexity, whatever the cost. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.